I'm calling this meeting of Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools regular Board of Education meeting. I'm Shannon Marimón, and I'm actually stepping in tonight to run the meeting. And Lorna Thomas-Farquharson is attending a work conference out of state, but she is joining us virtually by phone. So we have her listening intently throughout this meeting. So to start things off, let's begin with a roll call. Charlotte?
Mr. Gagnon?
Present.
Mr. Goldman?
Present.
Dr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Marimón?
Here.
Mrs. Nezzarella?
Present.
Dr. Thomas-Farquharson? Here. Mrs. Yagaloff?
Here.
Student Representative Mr. Chris Rimmel? And Student Representative Mr. Liam Wright.
Here.
Thank you. And Liam, can I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Liam. And no revision to the agenda order for tonight, so we will proceed on to public communications. So this is an opportunity where we get to hear from the public about your thoughts and questions and suggestions. When you come to the podium, please share your name and town of residence. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and please be mindful of Charlotte, who will be holding up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time and a red card when your time is expired. And we ask at that time that you please conclude your comments and return respectively to your seat. Please be aware that we are attentively listening to you as you are providing public comment, but it is a policy that we do not respond to comments as they are being made. Also, please keep in mind to deliver comments in a respectful manner and be mindful of role modeling, especially for the young people throughout our district. And with this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. However, we prioritize those speaking on agenda items first. And as a reminder for all of us, the agenda items for tonight's meeting are to accept and approve revised and new policies, adoption of education specifications for various school construction projects, building a culture of belonging, mental health and wellness update, college credit-bearing opportunities, AP, ECE, and CCP, and a financial report. So I will start with those who signed up for the agenda items. And first on the list is Olivia Thomas-Farquharson. So please come to the podium.
Hello, my name is Olivia Thomas-Farquharson, and I'm 17 years old, a senior in high school. I homeschool here in West Hartford, and I'm here to ask you to change your policy and allow homeschoolers to take AP exams at the schools that you are responsible for. This year, I was planning to take several AP courses, but my schoolwork plan was disrupted when I found out that homeschoolers are not allowed to take AP exams at Hall or the other local high schools. I've taken the SAT at Hall, which was both enjoyable and really important for the college applications that I'm working on. And I hadn't dreamed that this community that I feel so connected to would exclude me in this way. The explanation given for this ban was that Hall doesn't have the resources to include homeschoolers for these standard exams. I really value the way our West Hartford community works incredibly hard to give other minorities the advantages some people want to deny them. And I cannot believe that such a community is unable or unwilling to share their abundant resources with my siblings and the other local homeschoolers. This year, for the first time, I will personally be contributing to those resources with my own taxes. I recently got my first job at the Mark Twain House. I work as one of the costumed tour guides, giving tours in Victorian costumes set in 1889. I come to the library here all the time. The librarians know me by name. I've been at the Capitol many times advocating for young people, and I once spoke at a public hearing there. This community is my community, and I'm asking that you'd be willing to give a minuscule part of our resources to something that is extremely important for my education and my future. It may be too late for me to benefit from taking AP exams, but it won't be too late for my siblings. I want them to have this opportunity when they are my age, even if I have to make do without it. And even if you can't change this rule right away, I'd like to make a special plea for my younger brother, Philip, the really tall one over there. He's already completed half of his AP chemistry course, and he's one of the best students in the class. He wouldn't say so, but it's really true. He needs this chance to officially prove that he's learned the course material. Please make an exception to the current policy for him so that he can register for the exam this May. But most of all, please change this policy permanently so that all the students in West Hartford will be able to take these important exams at their own local school. I'm personally appealing to each one of you. Dr. Thomas-Farquharson, I loved what you wrote on the West Hartford Public Schools website about excellence being defined as thriving academically, socially, and emotionally, and about how learning extends beyond the walls of a classroom. That really encapsulates the best things about my homeschooling experience, and I hope that you'll help me extend my learning into those AP classrooms. Ms. Nazarala, I read that you have an interest in global education. As a bilingual English-German child born in Sweden, I feel that homeschooling has helped me to understand and value my international heritage in a way that a more traditional education couldn't have done. I'm speaking to each of you too, Ms. Fernandez, Mr. Gagnon, Ms. Marimón, Mr. Goldman, Dr. Harris. Please change this policy for me and for all the other driven students coming after me. Thank you for letting me speak here, and thank you for listening.
Philip Thomas-Farquharson, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. It is a privilege. My name is Philip Thomas-Farquharson. I'm standing here before you with a simple request, that you make it possible for me to take my AP Chemistry exam at Hall High School at the end of this school year. I'm a homeschooled student who lives in the Hall High School district. It is common practice across the U.S. for external students to take AP exams at their local high schools. And this is what the College Board instructs me to do. To successfully apply to colleges, I depend upon that common practice, which means that I depend upon the welcome of my local school. But when I went to Hall High School to ask to actually register for the exam, they told me I was excluded because I was not enrolled as a student there. They said that they don't have the resources to allow me in, and that it would be a liability to let me participate. I'm in 10th grade, and I'm an active member of the community here. I see to it that my elderly neighbor's snow is shoveled. I check out the same books at the library as you do. I bike down the same streets with helmet and lights and reflective vest. I don't pose any kind of threat, and I doubt that any kid trying to take the AP exams is likely to be posing a huge threat. So the idea that I can't participate because of liability seems like a red herring to me. After all, if I register as a student there, which is my right, I'd be there every single day, and no one is worried about that. The other reason they gave at Hall High School for my being excluded is that it would take too many resources to allow me and others to take the exam. Basically, that it would be a real hassle for them. I get that, but I think that it is a shocking excuse. When extra accommodations are being made for all different students these days, when we're making sure that everyone is included, when we are rightly going to great trouble and expense to make sure everyone has access to good education, to deny the students the chance simply to take an exam is unconscionable. I suspect there might be a bit of pettiness involved. Either take the full package as a student of Hall High School, or we won't give you anything. Or maybe it really just feels like too much of a bother. I know educators are overworked, but if you think about it, we're paying full taxes to support Hall High School, like anyone else, and we're only asking for a very tiny dedication of resources. I love Connecticut and I love West Hartford. I want to contribute to making it an even better place. So if this cannot be resolved here, even if I never get to take an AP exam, you can be sure that I will be at the Capitol soon, advocating for kids like me being allowed to take the AP exams, trying to get a bill passed that guarantees all of us the right to prove what we have learned so that we can successfully apply to colleges. But it would be so wonderful if you could help me so that I myself can take them. I believe that you could act to achieve this. I respectfully request that you do that. Thank you for hearing me out.
Clara Thomas-Farquharson.
I'm Clara, and I'm 13 years old. I love living in West Hartford, and I love homeschooling. I need to be able to take AP exams in a few years to prove what I can learn. May I appeal to you to change the policy in West Hartford schools so that I can be included? I read about you all on the internet, that you care about all children and want them all to be learning and thriving. I didn't see anything there to make me think that you meant only children educated in school classrooms, so I am assuming that you care about me and want me to be learning and thriving too. This brochure you have reassures me. It says, "The West Hartford Public Schools seeks to build a sense of belonging for all students in the district. I will learn and thrive more if I know that I am allowed to take those important AP exams in a few years. Then I can apply to great colleges and have a good chance of being accepted. I hope that you are in time for my brother, but for me, you have a few extra years. Will you promise me that you can at least fix this problem in time for me? It's really important to me. Thank you for caring about all of us."
And Jacob Thomas-Farquharson.
Hello, my name is Jacob Thomas-Farquharson, and I'm 11 years old. I'm the youngest in our family, last but not least. I want to ask you to please let homeschoolers take AP exams at the West Hartford Public Schools. I don't think it's fair to keep some students from being able to prove they know something well and to earn college credit just because they don't go to a certain school. I love reading my graphic novel version of The Merchant of Venice. In the play, Shakespeare writes, "If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die?" I don't think homeschoolers should be at a disadvantage just because there are fewer of us. I'd like to take some AP exams too when I'm in high school, but I hope you'll change the policy before then. What I'm most interested in is birds. Maybe someday they'll have an AP ornithology test that I can ace. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. So moving on to general comments for non-agenda items, we have Anita.
Hello, my name is Anita and I live in West Hartford. I'm not new to this podium. What you will see there, Ms. Lorna and I had given a FOIA for records for less than 7% of expenditures. We have gotten less than 2%. As you can tell, it started on July 31st. The first hearing was supposed to be July 31st. Again, we have not received it. I would also like to say that at the hearing on November 8th, I paid almost $2,000 to have a court reporter there. Ms. Hewitt came with 2 attorneys paid for by the district, using educational funds that should be expended on hiring top-tier educators, providing supplies to the classroom for teachers and students, providing support for teachers and students to achieve the goals of excellence in education. Rather, we see you use these funds to hire attorneys. Attorneys to explain what? You have expenditures. She has provided what? End of year reports. What are those? They're numbers. They're only numbers unless you could provide them with the records that show this is where we spent the money. Here's the proof. And business transaction says there's a movement. Less than 3%. The majority of that is transportation. When I asked her the percentage of routine, she looked at me. I said, even transportation. Bulk of it is transportation. Well, we have 2 major carriers. She couldn't even give me the financial agreements. 2 major carriers provide 80%. Those in business know that 20-80% rule. Majority of those, the ledgers are in my hand, majority of those expenditures are routine. From January 23rd, we are now in December. We're a month away from when we first issued it. That's a failure. Andrew Morrow, I send him an email. I get an email in which I'm asking for clarification as a right of a parent to understand policies. Do you know what he sends me back? Out of the office, I call and speak to his assistant. Do you know what the assistant says? He's in the office. Why give that false statement? Elizabeth Hewitt, under oath. As I said, I paid $2,000 for a court reporter. Question from her attorney, do you have an understanding as to how many FOIA requests have been submitted? I do, actually. Our attorney has. Internal attorney has indicated that Ms. Arakelian has submitted 28 FOIAs. False information, false fact. I did not submit 28 FOIAs to her. She made that statement under oath. I see my red card, but false. You can tell the information that you gave me, which was also incorrect, and how it almost jeopardized my computer. I have a belief in you, Paul Vicens. Please don't shred it.
Next, we have Addie.
Addie Lord in West Hartford. There is a glaring omission in tonight's agenda. On Thursday, November 30th, a grievance hearing was held between WHPS, the BOE, and the WHEA, a union in town for teachers. At this hearing, the BOE was represented by 3 members. I'm very concerned that quorum was not met. WHPS and the BOE were both represented by Shipman and Goodwin. I have concerns of conflict of interests. Science teachers are pleading with the district and the BOE that they are overloaded and understaffed, that it is adversely affecting our students. The head of HR, Julio Duarte, stated, "We are done talking." I'm not surprised at this statement, as Mr. Duarte has no qualifications or experience in human resources. However, education dollars should not be wasted on lawyers due to hiring underqualified or unqualified staff. At the hearing, Attorney Ritter of Shipman and Goodwin said that in order to meet what the union is asking, the district would have to hire 3 additional science teachers, and that it was not the union's place to make that decision. They are the people on the ground. Who else would know what our students need? The lawyers? I don't really think so. It is not up to WHPS to hire and pay for expensive lawyers to line their coffers because you need them to fix your mistakes, your messes. You need them to atone for the mistakes and the messes that your staff that you hire who are not qualified make. At the last meeting, our representative from Connaught, Mr. Ramal, he asked about Principal Hines. Superintendent Vicens, you stated it was an omission on your part. We have 2 high schools. We have 2 high school principals, one of which suddenly and unexplained medical emergency, he had to take leave. We've heard nothing since. The students heard nothing. The teachers heard nothing. We parents, we've been watching, and we know that when suddenly somebody goes on leave, 9 times out of 10, they disappear. They're switched out of the district. How is it possible to omit this from your report as superintendent the same week it happened? The same week that Mr. Hines gave a report to me that he wasn't allowed to previously, one that you asked for a copy of, but I said I would not give it to you. We are worried that Mr. Hines will not come back.
I would like to call a point of order, please. I'm not sure where the rules state, but as an employee, there are privacy rules and medical privacy guarantees of anybody who is
reclaiming
hired by
my time. I'm not asking for a disclosure of
but
medical.
You're slandering and you're saying...
I'm not slandering anybody.
You are not...
I'm not slandering anybody. No explanation was given. And how could you omit that? That the principal of our school was no longer present.
They have a medical leave, which they have a right to have, and no one has any business asking the reason. And the parents of all the kinder kids were informed.
We can ask where
You
our
have
beloved
crossed the
principal
line.
is and if he's coming back.
No, you can't. It was given to the parents that he's on medical leave. It is no one's business why or when he will return. You are crossing a line.
It's very coincidental,
crossing
Miss
a line.
Nezzarella, that it was when I was asking for reports on my son's medical emergency.
We've reached the time limit. Thank you.
Of course we did. Thanks for interrupting me.
Any other public communications? Hearing none. Let's move on to non-staff communications and reports. Would love to hear from Liam from Hall High School.
Yes. So, with many winter holidays around the corner, Hall is running many opportunities for students to give back to their community. For starters, on Friday we have our PJ Day, which is being run through our National Honor Society, which is given to benefit kids with cancer. The preface of it is you pay $1 to wear pajamas for the day in school. Also, we raised 812 pounds of food and brought 236 hygiene products for the West Hartford Food Pantry, as many Hall students ran a Seva Diwali food drive. The National Art Honor Society is running an art supply drive as well. We are also taking donations for the Mayor's Youth Council's Adopt a Family project by donating many gifts and necessities to families in need. Also, Unified Theater ran their production last weekend to a very successful show of them traveling through the solar system. And our Model UN group went to UHeart this past weekend for their annual conference. Finally, winter sports tryouts have concluded and practices have started. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. So we'll be moving on to unfinished business. So we have a motion by Lorna Thomas-Farquharson, Gayle Harris, and Shannon Marimón to accept and approve revised and new policies, a second reading. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education accept and approve as a second and final reading the following revised and new policies, which were reviewed by the Board Policy Subcommittee. The first being Policy 2300, a policy regarding holds on the destruction of electronic information and paper records. Policy 3050, a model code of conduct governing procurements under a federal award. And Policy 4070, alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace. 4220, employment and student teacher checks, and 4350, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of adults with an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder. Before we move on, I'm seeking a motion to consider the recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right. And I think Andy Morrow will be joining us. Any discussion? No, any context or, oh.
You're an easy group tonight. Yeah, if you remember, this is for those who are new, this is the second reading. The board, anytime there is a new substantial policy, there's a two-reading process. We have a first reading, we have a second reading. There were no comments or concerns with the first reading, so you know.
Can I ask a question? So, you said a substantial change or a non-substantial change? I was under the impression it was just
Anything
wording.
that has a substantial change has two readings, or a new policy has two
Okay,
readings.
and these, I thought these were primarily just
These
rewriting.
These are new policies or changes that are substantial to us, but these are putting us in line with the shipment book, which we adopted as a board in 2020.
Okay.
With no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Lorna. And any opposed? Abstentions? All right. So the motion, actually, let me go through each one. I want to make sure I do it properly. So for policy 2300, the policy regarding holds on the destruction of electronic information and paper records. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. For policy 3050, Model Code of Conduct governing procurements under a federal award, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Lorna, was that an aye?
Yes,
Yep, okay, great. Motion passes. And then policy 4070, alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Policy 4220, employment and student teacher checks, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, thanks, Lorna. Any abstentions? Motion passes. And last but not least, 4350, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of adults with an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Great, thank you. So new business, we have the adoption of educational specifications for various school construction projects. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education adopt the following educational specifications. As part of the State of Connecticut school construction grant process, the Board of Education must adopt educational specifications for each grant-eligible school construction project. The projects are the Hall High School roof replacement, A, B, and C wings, the Brayburn Elementary School roof replacement, main roof, the Bugby Elementary School roof replacement, main roof, Webster Hill Elementary School window replacement, Duffy Elementary School fresh air ventilation and air conditioning improvements, and the Webster Hill Elementary School fresh air ventilation and air conditioning improvements. Is there a motion on the table to adopt these educational specifications?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Claire. Any discussion?
So as you may notice, I got you an upgrade tonight from Bob. And so Bob's not able to join us tonight, but Liz has agreed to join us if there are any questions on this. As you mentioned, Shannon, this is for those who have been on the board before, we do this occasionally. This is a process that we have to follow in order for our projects to be grant eligible in Connecticut, that the board has to adopt educational specifications for each of our projects. And so we're broken down here into standard school construction grants. These are our typical grants that we use for roof and for window projects. But you have to apply, have plans received by the state, and receive permission before going to bid. And so reimbursements for these for us is 38.22% for eligible expenses. We anticipate our eligible expenses to be about 65% of each project. There's certain expenses that aren't eligible. For example, the state only pays for a 20-year roof. We install 30-year roofs. And so they'll only consider the difference. We have to pick up the difference between this as a non-eligible expense. Okay? Any questions that we can?
Claire?
So I'm just curious, so this is part of the capital improvement plan,
Correct.
but this is the funding
Correct.
arm of what you will present in capital improvements later?
Nope, you've actually already approved all of this in capital improvement projects for both the board and the town. It's just we can't apply for grant reimbursement until you accept and we show that the board has accepted the individual educational specifications for each project, which is what's attached here.
But when we approved the capital improvement plans, did we approve the full funding of it or just funding minus what we hope to get in grants?
Yes. I'll let Liz explain that, but yes.
So what
the answer is yes.
So what we do is, this is the CIP that you adopted last April, and that the town council adopted last April. And so we estimate the total cost of the project, but in the actual CIP document, we estimate how much of that will be funded via long-term debt and how much will be funded via grant. And what these documents allow us to do is to apply to the state so that we can get the grant funding that we had been counting on when we adopted these projects originally.
Ethan?
So what is the track record of the state in terms of accepting the requests?
There's two different requests in front of you. One is the standard state construction grant, which are, as long as you cross the T's, dot the I's, and submit, you get the reimbursement rate. The rate is based, each town has the different reimbursement rate. We have a reimbursement rate of 38%. That's dropped over the years. It used to be 42 for a while and 46, and
Yes.
but that's for any construction that we do that meets the qualifications.
Yeah.
For that. The HVAC school construction grant is a newer beast. It's a competitive project, so we don't have any guarantee of that, but we anticipate our projects, since they fall under the funding for that, we anticipate that reimbursement for those.
Okay. So I'm just curious, so the work was already put into the CIP, and was there bonds, or is that still to come?
So we bond our projects in arrears, so we have not issued any bonds yet, and the projects have not started yet. So you approved the project that we were authorized to go forward with it, and this is just the next step in moving those forward.
Okay.
So we don't bond, the town does.
No, I understand that, but I'm just wondering, do you reduce the amount that was put in, or, but you already assumed?
We already planned that we would be getting these grants. Now, there are always minor variations based on what percentage of costs are ineligible, the total cost of the project, but overall, we have some history of that and some trends, and so we're able to estimate.
I was wondering about the CIP, because last spring, the state changed the reimbursement, I forget, as part of the budget.
That was a special ed
Just
reimbursement.
special ed.
That's a
No,
different
I
reimbursement
understand,
piece,
I was just curious.
Yeah, so we do
track
have
record.
some notice regarding the reimbursement rate for capital projects, and so if you apply under a particular reimbursement rate, that is the reimbursement rate you get if it was
So if we accept this, we hopefully get a 38%
uneligible
reimbursement?
cost.
If we
correct?
don't
Uneligible
approve this,
cost.
we get nothing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Gayle?
So I had a question. If we get these grants, do we get them sort of in a lump sum, or is there,
So
it's
what we
over
do,
a time period?
we get them over a time period. We typically file for grant reimbursements in arrears. So as we hit different kind of benchmarks in the projects, we have to actually file a drawdown request from the state, and then they send us the money. So we typically do that if it's a large project and we have a lot of activity going on. The town will do that monthly. Otherwise, they do it on at least a quarterly basis.
But some will close out years.
Yes, they don't
years
close
later.
out for years and years.
Meaning you're getting the money over years?
Yes, we get the money over years. They reimburse you to a certain percentage of the grant, and then they generally do some sort of an audit on it, and then the town will get the balance of the money.
Okay, and did the grants come with any kind of stipulation in terms of completing the project, or?
They come with limitations, like as to what's reimbursable, what isn't, and all of that, and they're bounded by the not only the application but the specifications for each of the projects. But that's really all that's the
Because I
only.
mean, sometimes I've seen that we assume we're going to do a project and then it gets pushed off for one reason or another. So does the grant stipulate that the project must be done within a time period, or it's up to us?
It's up to us the time period, but they don't send you funding until you have made progress or, have an active project ongoing.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Of course.
Just so you know, also these the Brayburn, the hall roof is slated for the summer of 2024. Brayburn is 25, and Bugby is planned for 26. So we're doing this in advance.
Any further discussion? Now, do we need to motion for each individual?
You can just
grant,
do it
or
as one.
Okay.
I'm sure you
So,
can do it as
having motioned for the adoption of these educational specifications, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
Great.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to staff communications and reports, I'll turn over to you, to Superintendent Fasaina.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Pleasure to be able to provide a report. And I'm going to start with some shares and some celebrations. There's actually a lot of things to really talk about and celebrate in the report this time. I'll begin with Hall High School's hosting of its annual Unified Theater. And as mentioned, there were over 100 students of all different ability levels performing on stage. The play itself consisted of 9 acts themed around space travel, but really the overall theme of Unified Theater, if you haven't had a chance to go see it, is it features peer relationships, problem solving, cooperation, and coming together. It was a great event held last week. Very excited to highlight Conard sophomore Juliana Farquharson, that might be a familiar name, Hall senior Daniel Catalin, who were both featured in the inaugural episode of Fox 61's 2023 Student News program. So as part of this program, those 2 students were interviewed on set for a piece that aired on December the 1st, and in total there were 10 students who developed short pieces that will air on various segments of the daily news throughout the day, hosted by Fox. So we're very excited by that. God bless. I want to give a shout out to Hall senior Arelis Balestas, who organized and coordinated the first townwide career fair hosted at the town hall last night. It featured a variety and quite a range of local employers along a great diversity of career paths. Arelis was inspired to develop a career fair based on her own college and career search, and a desire to share the experience that she's had and support her fellow students. It was well attended and a great event overall. Under the direction of our athletic director, Jason Siegel, Conard and Hall sports captains met for their second of 4 quarterly meetings in late November. These meetings identify local speakers to engage with our students on topics of leadership, both on and beyond the playing arena. So that's a great effort. And I would be remiss not to mention that we are in the holiday concert season with performances across all of our elementary, middle, and high schools, not only this week, but throughout the entire month of December. In terms of some news under operations, the district, I think I've been talking about the change to kindergarten entry age. So we've recently published some information on our website, and we're sending information out through school newsletters. We're sending communication directly to the pre-K programs in the town and a variety of other means to publicize the change in the age of entry for kindergarten and all of the procedures related to the registration process, to include the potential for a waiver for students born in September, October, November, December, who will be turning age 5 within 3 months. That information is posted to our website, can be accessed in multiple languages, and we will be providing a much fuller board report on that next time on December the 19th. So just sort of a teaser to that, and continuously trying to provide information around that. I'd also like to mention that we're in the early stages of convening a committee of teachers, students, and families to review requests for public dedications of facilities. I've been in communication with our town manager, and we're looking to form ad hoc committees that will review existing requests against a set of criteria and forward a recommendation to the board. So you will ultimately hear those recommendations and have transparency around the guidelines and the rationale for any public bringing this. I will be providing you those updates on the specifics and the process as it's more fully developed. So that's just some behind the scenes work. The big news for tonight that I'm very excited to talk about, very proud to report that we are one of, I'll correct the notes that I sent through email, only 17 districts in the state whose K-3 reading program was approved by the Connecticut State Department of Education for its alignment to the new Science of Reading standards. So as you may recall, there was recent legislation that required all public schools to align their early literacy curriculum to the reading of science standards. And to that end, the State Department of Education published, I think it was in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 commercial programs approved for use. And the reality is that was a fairly narrow list of curricular materials that caused some consternation, concern among districts in terms of their ability to either align or face the need to have significant resource adoption. West Hartford, if you do not know, has a locally designed program of instruction that was designed by teachers and instructional leaders here in the district. We're very excited by the fact that the quality of that curriculum has been externally recognized by not only the State Department of Education, but the professional learning company that they use to review all of the materials received. And we're very excited that that's a demonstration really of the quality of what we do here. And last but not least, just by way of reminder, I want to say this out loud at the podium. Friday, December the 24th, which is the last day before the holiday break, will follow as has each year. I'm sorry, Friday, December 22nd. Friday before the holiday break, I'll say it that way. I looked at that twice. We will follow a Wednesday early release schedule on that Friday. This information has been shared with the principals. They have put it into their newsletters. They will continue to remind. I will continue to remind at the next meeting so that we have full transparency on this for our families and their planning. Pending your questions, those are highlights of what's happening here in the district.
Any discussion, questions? It's a quiet group. I just want to say I did have a chance to go to the career fair last night, and it was very exciting. I brought my middle schooler, and she asked lots of questions and did a firm handshake and looked people in the eye, and I think that you can't have enough of those opportunities. So thank you for
so
making
proud
that
of her,
possible.
but I'm also throw a quick shout out to everyone that was there. We had a lot of town partners, and we had a lot of local partners. Appreciate people giving of their time to make a difference for some students.
Yeah, it was great turnout. All right, moving on to staff reports and board discussions. We're going to be hearing from Ann McKernan and Teresa Rangel on building a culture of belonging in the West Hartford Public Schools.
While they're getting set up, I'll just give them a quick introduction. So at our convocation this year, one of the things that I really charged not only our educational leadership team with, but really the full cadre of our teachers and all of the professionals that help support our educational mission. Charged them with the notion of creating a welcoming school environment and a culture of belonging. And I want to stress the difference between, it's always an important first step that people can feel welcomed. It's something else entirely. It's much deeper work so that we can establish cultures of belonging. So this is really something that we've been working toward relative to our understanding of the importance of a school environment. And when you feel that you genuinely belong to a place, you have a much greater opportunity to succeed. You have much more likelihood because you have buy-in, you have shared expectations and things of this nature. So I'm very pleased to introduce our new Executive Director of Equity Advancement, Teresa Rangel, who is there behind the curtain doing her magic to pull this presentation up. And of course, I think everyone knows Ann McKernan, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. So we will wait a moment as they get that projector to display. No pressure, Teresa. Any introductory comments, Anne, that you'd like to share with the group? For the benefit of the board, I should mention that I have it on good authority that we will be soon replacing our audiovisual system here in Town Council chambers. They have a temporary fix that has been somewhat effective. I only do that for students.
sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, which I promise you that we tried it out right before. Yes, okay, sorry, I apologize. Yeah, it was working earlier, but we are going to push. You see him out? That's a careful statement to make. I see him out. Ms. McKernan, are you in? It's really strange. It's literally locking everyone out. Give her another second. We can do without the visuals. They're really nice visuals, though. I'm kind of attached to my visuals.
We promise to absorb them
You
afterwards.
promise to absorb
if you
them
send
afterwards?
them,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. Oh, the projector's on.
It is on the agenda, but just to say.
You want?
Okay.
We will paint a picture as you're talking.
Oh, if that doesn't work too, then we're really in trouble. So apologies for the.
There you go.
You know, I think he did that on purpose.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Later, he'll have to tell me the secret to his success. So apologies for that, and thank you for the technological troubleshooting. We've been talking a lot about creating cultures of belonging, and West Hartford, I think that we do a really phenomenal job with doing this work, and doing this work holistically speaking. So it's not something that's like here and there sprinkled in, but it's really structured into the how schools are built here in West Hartford, from K all the way through to the high school. And so as you have, I know that you have in your report, by the way, starts on page 59 after all those lovely, now this isn't going to work. I can't.
No. We're having a lot of time. All right, I'll go up.
Can you click? Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Thank you. And so all of our work is, belonging for us is really a precursor to equity, right? We can't really get to equity without having students have a sense of belonging. And so we anchor all this work with the vision of the graduate. Is it going backwards or forward?
No,
it's me going backwards.
Oh, no. Okay, there you go.
Sorry. Okay, so this image, what you have, see, I'm going to tell you one of the beautiful artwork here, really kind of anchors the work. The question was brought up at the last board meeting about what are we doing in schools to support what's happening with some of the things that are happening with students using hate language, hate speech, really unkind acts. And so our approach is always going to be proactive, because that's really all we can do. We understand that our students are coming into us with different experiences, with different influences that influence their thinking, and our job as educators is really to educate, right? So they come to us as they are. It's our job to create the kind of the space and the place to ensure that we are really giving the messaging of what our expectations are for how students behave. And so what you have here is you have the knowledge that you have that's built through relationships of people who are different than you, and then you also have experience, right? Your lived experiences and being able to develop a sense of empathy. That gap that's in between, that's where we find microaggressions, that's where we find hate speech, that's where we have those things. Our job in schools is to try to really programmatically develop ways that we are closing that gap for students. It's really hard to spew words of hate or to do things that are unkind when you know and love the people that you're around, right? So when it comes to everything that we do, including our hiring practices, we're really looking at providing windows and mirrors for students, not just in their literature and things that they're reading, but also in the people who they interact with, and making sure that we are creating spaces where you're learning about people who are different than you, where you're spending time with people who are different with you, where you're bonding and connecting. So equity really is about a space of belonging, and belonging is really about connections. It's all about the relationships that we have, and doing everything that we can to foster those relationships amongst students, and also between the adults, amongst adults, and adults with students as well. I'm going to go backwards again. I'll turn it over to you if you like.
Okay. So the vision of our graduate, thank you. The vision of the graduate is really a North Star for us. It's a founding document that we brought to the district or created within the district, and with the community's help. We had some community voice in, we had teacher voice in, we had some student voice in, and we identified both skills and dispositions that we like to, intend to grow in our students. And it is a foundational document, meaning that it influences all aspects of our work. And one of the things is we looked around at various schools that have their portrait of a graduate or vision of the graduate that we felt we really needed to include were those things that we call dispositions. Yes, transferable academic skills are very important, and I'll talk about those, and they also help to create an atmosphere of understanding, but I think we're particularly proud in our vision of the graduate that we start with things like honor and integrity, and that we define that to act in a fair and equitable manner in all circumstances, to be truthful in your words and in your actions, and reflect on your words and actions, and when there has been harm, to address that harm. So as we were putting the vision of the graduate together, it was important for everyone. I remember the teachers around the table talking about, it's great to have critical thinking, it's great to have all of these skills, but how are we helping to give student messages about themselves as a person, not just themselves as a student. So we use this document quite a bit from pre-K through 12 to influence our student handbooks, our code of conduct, our athletic code of conduct. It is an important document that informs our lessons, and we have particular programming and lessons around these matters in things such as morning meeting in the elementary school. And every elementary school class has a morning meeting where they review standards of behavior, all different types of topics that would be around these types of skills and dispositions. Our elementary school teachers are quite skilled at bringing mentor texts into these discussions so that children can see images of themselves or reflections of themselves and others and understand their challenges and their experiences and understand the experience and challenges of others. In our middle school, we have an advisory program that meets every day, and 4 days a week. It might be a check-in with the teacher and a check-in with your teammate, your classmates. It might be time to take a break from some academic heavy lifting and do some of your organization to keep you on track. And once a week, there is a particularly well-crafted advisory lesson, often around some of these skills, dispositions, or learning about others. Our high school community lessons, and I have a high school student here, so he can probably nod along or certainly add into this. These are lessons designed with a lot of input from our students about topics that are important to them. And they often hit on difficult topics, how to understand them, how to discuss them. This year in the community lessons, for instance, they started with going over the vision of the graduate and what it means to be a West Hartford student who's working on these. They also worked on what we call respect agreements, and these are agreements on how to conduct oneself in advisory and in school. Community is also used to celebrate and honor all different groups in our school to show their shared humanity. And that could be religious holidays, it could be Thanksgiving, it could be Veterans Day, it could be the fact that Connor was featured on Good Morning America, or that Hall has the state championship soccer team. Or these are great times for us to come together as a community to celebrate, to learn about one another, and to specifically discuss the skills in this vision of the graduate. And this is really how we try, from kind of the overall and the programmatic way, to send these messages. And Teresa spoke of the previous slide where all of the things that get in the way, the biases and all of the things that students might hear, we tried to bridge that gap that she was showing before through these discussions. I'm particularly impressed with all the work that goes into morning meeting, advisory, and community. At the high school level, there is a great deal of student input. In fact, they create the lessons. I see Liam nodding. I don't know if you've ever got to contribute to these lessons, Liam?
Not myself, but I know many of my peers have and friends. So,
and that's really important because that gives the group of teachers who are helping to craft these lessons, like, what do the kids want to talk about? What's bothering them? Do they have questions about? I remember a few years ago there had been some incidents of violence towards Asian Americans, and that was particularly something that the kids wanted to discuss and wanted to have some lessons on, and to understand better what are people going through, what are they feeling, why are they feeling this, why is this even happening? And you need to have those outlets in order to, we're never going to be immune from the larger community, but in order to buffer it, I guess that's the best word I can say, and in order to reteach and teach when difficult things happen. And unfortunately, our young people see a lot of difficult things happening, so there's lots of opportunity to speak. But these are our ways to create a culture of belonging through not necessarily the academic program, but the general programming. And we really use this part of the vision of the graduate to guide our thinking. As we go on, great. We also have our what we call transferable academic skills. So these skills of the vision of the graduate, you might think of more related to class: collaboration, effective communication, inquiry, critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. Our curriculum certainly embeds lots and lots of opportunities to explore difficult topics, to analyze, and to challenge thinking. Because truly it's in those conversations, it's in those experiences in class where you disagree with others, where you don't understand their point of view. When we challenge children to understand a different perspective. You know, the concept that people have different perspectives is not just they're disagreeing with you, their life experience brought them to a different perspective. And just being able to understand that, have a perspective consciousness in a sense, is really an important thing that we try to have our young people understand and to practice. It's great to practice disagreeing without being, as they say, disagreeable or aggressive, but to practice disagreeing in a discussion format. We also like to try to say we're going to challenge the problems, not the people necessarily. And, you know, we know it's difficult sometimes to do the right thing, and teenagers especially are very challenged to do the right thing sometimes in difficult situations, but we try to inform them how best to do the right thing or to seek help when it's difficult. It's not so hard when it's easy, but when it's a challenging situation. So we want to study challenging issues. We want to give opportunities for critical thinking. We want to give opportunities for difficult conversations, debate, and increased perspective consciousness. We want to study issues of injustice, marginalization, and find effective resolutions. That's more of the academic side, and this happens at elementary all the way through high school. And so I think it's important to understand that we're coming from not only the academic world, but also all of the other aspects of being in a community that are important to understanding everyone's perspective. And, you know, and I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa. You know, I wish I could say, because I feel so strongly about both the way we present material, our teachers' pedagogy, and how they are skilled at having students think critically through comparison scenarios, through analysis, through looking at different perspectives, through the content that they present. I wish we could say we are. That injects us with an immunity that we do not feel these things. But our students live in this world that is sadly, seemingly a little more conflicted each day, and it's our role to guide them in many ways. And that's not even, I can only touch on even a small portion of really what we do every day, because the modeling that teachers have, the way they mediate when there is conflict, the way they model themselves, the way our administrators do, I think it all is contributing to our efforts to show them, model for them, and present them with an environment where things can be resolved in more respectful ways, and disagreements can be hashed out, discussed, and people can take a greater understanding, take a moment to form a greater understanding of why some people have different perspectives. So I'll turn it back over to my friend here, Teresa.
No, I was going to say, just take it away.
No, I'm sorry. There's so much to say in this kind of a topic of how your entire program helps to shape the students' understanding that this is a challenging environment to live in, but yet they can thrive. So sorry, no more words. You go.
No, we're doing great. So again, you know, at no point would we claim that problems don't arise and that things aren't happening. I'm sure Liam can attest that, right? As he's in school, he hears and things are happening in our schools, and we're always going to be on the receiving end of that. But I do think that we have buffered the children the best way that we possibly can with constant reinforcing messaging, opportunities to talk. You know, Anna had mentioned it, you know, just the value of having student voice brought to the table is that we're not just, you know, as adults, I think we're always thinking that we know what students are facing or we know what they want to talk about, but providing them an opportunity for them to give voice to what they would like to discuss. And I don't just mean in the secondary levels and elementary levels as well, really making sure that we reach out to students, that we figure out what does belonging mean to them, because you know, I recently had a conversation with some middle school students. It was very interesting. when talking to them about a trusted adult and what trusted adults provide, their number one thing that they want was an adult who would conserve their the privacy of what they've shared with them. Right? And you think about that, and it's like, it wasn't what I was expecting to come out of their mouths. But that's something that they valued, and that's something, and they knew the caveats, right? If it's dangerous, of course, there's a different story, but they just wanted to be able to share something with an adult and say, hey, listen, this X, Y, and Z is bothering me, and know that, that person didn't go and tell the teacher down the hall the same thing, right? They want to be able to have those trusted relationships. And so we're really working hard to embed these things in a real systemic way. We have them already in place, but we're doubling and tripling down on it, because we know that as the world becomes more and more tumultuous, our kids need that more and more. We can't afford to assume that they're getting what they need just by our efforts. We have to continue to reach out to them, continue to ask, and then continue to modify our behavior to match that. So we offer numerous opportunities for students to connect with each other, with adults. We also, of course, have a wide range of clinical and therapeutic supports as necessary when students feel like they need to talk to somebody that has a higher level of knowledge and ability to kind of have those really difficult conversations. And, I know that a big bone of contention for people is this idea of consequences. Nothing about the work that we're doing says that if a child does something where they have earned a consequence, that they don't get a consequence. But we are an institution of education. We educate. There has to be an opportunity for students to be able to return to the community and re-enter into the school community and take ownership of their own actions. And so, no matter what we do, we teach, right? And so that's also really, I think, a really important piece of the work that we do as we build places of belonging, because once I've learned and I've made some mistakes and I've learned from it, then I'm able to engage with my community in a better way. And that's what we hold to as our guiding light for how we work with children. So on that note,
I think we're ready for any questions or discussion.
Thank you. LaToya.
I went the wrong way again.
I just have a couple questions. So the first one around that, amazing document that y'all created, that culture y'all created, where you had students and teachers and families weigh in on that. It's amazing. So thinking about moving forward with it, is this something that kind of gets rolled out through the district, generally, or is it this document is now every advisory goes through this and the students also know about it, and then it's also sent separately to parents, and then parents can kind of get an understanding of how to also integrate that into the home? Or
you're talking about the vision of the graduate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Well, that's a great question, because the vision of the graduate, really, we formed it a few years ago after a lot of thought, a lot of input. And a lot of people think of the vision of the graduate as a high school document, but it's really not. It's a K-12 document. And so we have a portion of our district website devoted to it. In fact, when Dr. Moore was superintendent, he made 8 videos highlighting all our schools, and you can see them on our website. They're really amazing. The kids talking about what each aspect of that. You can tell I'm particularly proud of the dispositions, because the skills are great and we want everyone to be a critical thinker, but we really want them to have honor and integrity and respect themselves and others. But we really did a big push to highlight, Dr. Moore did a big push to highlight that last year, and I was, thought it was amazing. We have them posted in the school. We ask them to be included in all different aspects, as I say, from the student handbook to the athlete handbook, to the hallways, to we even made each one of those little icons available to teachers so they could put them on lessons individually. Let's say, in this lesson, you're working on this particular skill. And there's still a ways to go to have everyone understand every aspect, but we continue to promote it in every way. I was so happy I looked through, as I was writing the report, my portion, I looked through the community lessons, and I was so proud to see the first thing they did this year in community in the high school was review the vision of the graduate. And what does it mean? What does it mean to be a West Hartford student? What type of student are we trying to help develop what are those skills and dispositions that we value as a community, as a school district, as educators. And I'm really, really pleased with how far our community advisory and morning meeting lessons have come in the last few years. I think they've gone from kind of a time that could be used for catch-up, for business, and maybe a special event, to purposeful lessons, especially at the high school level with student input, and the middle school level with, much more, because they have it every day. They know one a week is specific learning lesson. It's not the time to just organize your folders. It's not the time to just catch up with a teacher. But it is going to be devoted to having a lesson together. And the elementary schools have done an amazing job of using different resources, mentor texts and Second Step and other resources, to proactively teach social and emotional skills and just pro-social behavior. Yep. And that's our job. Is, a very important part of our job is to teach the children how to get along when there's conflict, how to see someone else's point of view, and understand that that point of view may not make sense to you, but it truly does make sense to them. And they're just as important as you are in our community. So we take many different avenues to promote the vision of the graduate. One of the challenges has been the elementary schools for a long time had kind of their own way, right?
Well,
there's a walk-it way, or
as an elementary person, stop that.
I love it, but when you really look at what they were always saying, it really is the vision of the graduate in their own words. Yeah. So we don't want to take away kind of their
I think it folds in, right? I think the dispositions, I think it definitely folds into the dispositions, maybe slightly different words, right? But I think it still kind of always fits into the buckets.
In fact, when you show it to pre-K teachers, our pre-K specialist, Irene Garneau, I think the first time she said it is, this is pre-K. Yeah. And I was like, well, yes, absolutely. It is. But it's also grade 12. So thank you for saying that. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I just had one more question around thinking about building the culture of belonging and just like cultural celebrations and that kind of thing, and like just the thoughts around streamlining that in schools, and like, is everybody celebrating the same kind of things and lifting those up in the same way, or is that?
I would say that again. You do have all these different levels, but one example I can give you is the high school has 4 community lessons a month, and they make sure to devote one each month to celebrations. So at least one, they are finding all the celebrations and making sure they celebrate that. Our office also will ask on many of the big holidays, how is this being celebrated? For instance, Human Rights Day is coming up soon. So I just put out an email to all of the schools. Please tell us how you are participating in Human Rights Day. Veterans Day was just recently. And when I put that out, I've got such a long list of different beautiful ways the schools are celebrating veterans. So it's a combination of the structure you have in your school, how we are supporting and reminding the schools that these are important celebrations for all of our children and their families. So it's a little bit different at each level, but we go to great efforts to, I guess our fear is ever forgetting something, to tell you the truth.
Well, and part of it, I think, is honoring, like at the classroom level as well, as honoring the students who are in front of you and making it personal to them, right? So you have a classroom full of students, and you may have a culture that's being observed that maybe isn't necessarily as widely seen within the district. It's important for teachers to know that, understand that, and give a space and place for that within the classroom for a true sense of belonging, right? That I belong in this community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gayle?
Thanks. Well, thanks for that presentation. So I had a question. I mean, I sort of talked a little bit about this last time. I mean, we've had, some incidents in the school on different types of, some of them racial, some of them connected to some of the stuff going on in the Middle East. Yep. So my question is, this all sounds really good, and it is very good, but my question is, how do you measure any kind of outcome? How do you measure that what you're doing, which sounds great, is actually making any kind of an impact?
That's a really good question, right? When I think about measuring, right, there, it always is going to come down to Are we decreasing, right, the number of events like this that are happening? And understand that they're nuanced. And we actually had we were honored to go and join with some organizations to learn more about different topics. And one of the things that was really being expressed is just how much more acts of hate and of violence are actually happening, right? So if you think about within the last 20 years, I mean, we've multiplied the number, by large numbers, right? The amount of things and incidents that are happening. And that also is going to that's going to transfer into our schools, right? That, unfortunately, school is not the only place that our children are being influenced. Home is not the only place our children are being influenced. With these lovely devices come a world of, opportunity, which can be great opportunities, but also can cause really great harm. And you don't know, I think for most parents, when I speak to them, they have no idea what is kind of frequently popping up on their children's social media. So the only thing that we can do is to measure if we're having some decreases in these things happening, right? So something happens in a school, it becomes a community conversation within that school. You talk about it. You really try to build students' empathy muscle, because that's what keeps you, right? When you care about people, it keeps you from doing these things that are hurtful. And you also want to make sure that they understand, right? Because a lot of times students are really trying to, particularly when you get to older grade levels, they're trying to express their own passions, and they're trying to really stand up for things that they believe in. But how to do that while holding space and ensuring that you're not causing pain to someone else, right? So that's a skill that students have to learn. So we are constantly teaching. Yes, there may be a consequence. But that learning and building of connections is really the only tool that we have. Because we're if this was something that was able, where we can say, yep, we're going to make sure that this stops, it would have been done by now, right? We're constantly dealing with what the world is providing us, and the only thing we can do is be a light in times of darkness. And so we continue to shine that message on our students. We continue to encourage them to live up to the vision of a graduate and to have those spaces. But we just have to look for the decrease in numbers, right? To make sure that they're not still happening, that, the same incidences aren't still happening. And understand that, obviously kids need to learn this. It helps, to be honest with you, if our families are joining us in that and having these conversations. And so we are looking at ways of making sure that we don't just communicate within the schools, but that we also send information home. Because guess what? If I can get parents to have these conversations with their students about, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z at school, there's a consequence for it. We are all in this together. The schools will carry the load that they can carry, but we cannot carry this alone. We are all, really, it's, our future and our future generations are counting on us to learn how to work together to kind of reduce the number, right, of incidences like this that happen, and for us to build understanding, compassion, and empathy, so that just the thought of doing it would not even be something that a child would consider. But
I was going to also add that in terms of, seeing where we are and trying to quantify.
My number person.
I'm sorry?
Yes, my number person.
Oh, number person. Oh, you'll hear more of that later today. Certainly we track all of our incidences in our student management system by type, by consequence, and we can do reports on what kind of incidents we're having, if there's increases or decreases. And that's important to us to understand. In fact, we have a pretty robust data system that not only can track student achievement in different tests, exams, attendance, but also in kind of infractions that we're seeing. What kinds of infractions are we seeing? What kind of disciplinary consequences were going on? And there will always be education with every disciplinary consequence. But as Teresa said, there are. We have to sometimes address things with some more traditional approaches. We also have a school survey every year that has questions about how students feel in terms of safety. We have questions on there about how any concerns they're having. We have questions for parents on the parent survey. And I can tell you that the principals each year review their surveys and look for areas where there is a lower percentage of positive answers. So I sat with two principals this year who wanted to really understand why they were a little lower in a category. This year it was a student concern category. Are students nice to me in this school? I think it was an elementary school. And we were able to look at the data, and because of the way it was collected, we were able to see that it was the fourth graders, I think, in that case. And it was interesting because when you looked at it as a group, the principal was concerned. It used to be 82%, and now it was 78% of the kids answered in a positive manner to that question, that students are nice to me. And so she really wanted to understand, and without being able to initially say, I think it's this grade, I think it's this class. And so we actually were able to disaggregate it and say, oh, it was this grade. I wonder why that is. And then she was able to set a school goal around some of the particular questions. So I think in the terms of tracking, like specifically numbers wise, which I think is what you're pointing to, I can point to two things that are taken very seriously. One are overall infractions that are documented, so you can look year over year. And two, how surveys, and surveys are, we know that survey response rates are always a little bit questionable, but we do get we get responses that are in the range that you would hope, at least. They're not below. And we look at those seriously. So when questions, and there's open-ended sections on those questions too. So if it says, do you feel safe at school? And if you answered no, where? Is there a particular spot? Is it lunch? Is it recess? Is it the bus? And all principals get the results in the spring. They all look at them, and they often make school goals to address any area that they consider low in comparison to their historic data. So those are things I offer you because I think you are asking for some tracking of information as well. You're welcome. Claire?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I think a year ago we had a presentation on the vision of the graduate, and I think it's just so well thought out. It covers so many different areas and how it's woven in from elementary all the way to high school. But what hit me, these dispositions and qualities, I always thought of it, the vision of the graduate of stopping at that graduation. But now, if you have these years of this background, and now you're going into vocational school or your first employment after high school or to college, having some of these skill sets and these experiences. I'm not sure what other districts have or how close they are to this, but I feel really good about that buildup of the skills over years, that practice of conflict resolution, the strengths and the opportunities to have a voice. And it feels hopeful that our graduates, once they're gone, are able to handle situations, make a mark, deal with what life's going to throw at them, because we know it does throw stuff at you. But they're no longer with their families. They no longer have those teachers. And so I think it's a great program. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you again. The program was great. The presentation was great, and I think as everybody looks at this, and as you've pointed out, it's uncertain times. I think someone said dark times that unfortunately our kids are growing up in right now. And I was wondering if any aspect of this program addresses kind of how to separate out trusted information from not so trusted information. I think especially as we all look towards AI. I think ChatGPT launched just about a year ago today, and look where we are now.
Yeah.
So I'd just be curious to see if as a life skill, wading through just the bombardment of information that comes at people.
Yeah, that is a particularly important challenge, and we are doing quite a few things around it, but trying to make it systemic will be a little bit more work to get there. But I was encouraged just in a couple areas. One, we were developing a few classes that will in our library media our library media specialists really take a bulk of work around being not only safe on the internet and safe online, but also on what can and cannot be trusted. And that work has to be updated constantly. That's not a static field. You need to continually look. So ChatGPT and AI, we have a committee forming to give some guidance, some parameters left and right on good ways to use it in ways that would not be, let's say, academically in academic integrity. So we want to put left and right parameters on the use and give teachers some real guidance of how it can be used productively. So we'll be engaging in that work. We started a new course at the high school that's going to launch in the next semester called Human Behavior in the Digital World. It was put together by our computer science curriculum specialist, Jackie Coricelli, who's a leader in the field, and our social studies department team. It will be a high school elective, not a guaranteed experience for every child, but it hits on exactly what you're speaking to, which is, our behavior is definitely being affected by this digital world that's out there. And it could be elections, it could be information, it could be just staying safe online in new ways, in ways for financial security, in ways for your identity. I also recently it was great, I got a call from a parent at Hall whose father actually used to be like, I don't know what his position was, but it was a big position with Newsday. And then he was also a professor at SUNY Stony Brook. And his area of concentration is, it's like truth in media, really, is his area, because obviously he was with Newsday. So I invited our English department supervisors to listen in on the call with me, so that we can learn from some people in higher ed too, who have some real good professional development programs for our teachers, and perhaps, so we'll have to think of a thoughtful way to make it systemic, because it's an important and enormous topic. I would say our most systemic is through our LMSs, but we're looking to add on to that through courses, through content embedded in other courses. It's an enormous challenge. It really makes you stop in awe when you think about what is possible with deep fakes, with information, and to what extent you can trust it. So we have a responsibility there. We've got a ways to go, but we have started.
Moving target.
Any other questions? Lorna? Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Well, she's here. What's your question, Lorna?
Actually, it's more so a comment, if I may. First of all, I agree with all that has been shared. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so very much. And I greatly appreciate, although the title is Vision of a Graduate, that what you're talking about are building the skills that do not end once our students leave our district. And I really was struck by the statement of messages of themselves as a person, not just as a student. And I think that is so key in our role as role models for our young people and building their skill sets that will carry on for them now and beyond. So just want to say thank you so very much. Greatly appreciate all that you are doing and that you will continue to do.
Thank you both. All right, moving on to our presentation on mental health and wellness by Melissa Caballero.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Just give me 1 second as I get settled here, get my resources out, so don't forget to share some information with you. Thank you so much for letting me present tonight on mental health. It's a heavier topic, but a very important topic. I usually provide an annual board report around this time to give you a good sense of our current landscape and our responsive efforts that the board has funded to really support our students. This work is not work that's done in isolation. You'll hear some overlap with Teresa and Ann's presentation, the work that they were discussing that's being done in district district. But I'd be remiss if I didn't start this presentation by thanking our clinical staff that is in all of our buildings. We have multiple layers of clinical providers that are supporting our students every day, and they're incredibly skilled and dedicated. We have a Pupil Services Department Supervisor, Stacy Kellogg-Shove, who couldn't be here this evening, but she supports our clinical efforts as a psychologist and a leader in our district in this work. And more importantly, I would like to thank our community partnerships with the Village, the Bridge, Hartford Healthcare, and our parents and caregivers. You'll see throughout my presentation that this work is really intertwined with our parents and their efforts in supporting their children. So I'll talk about it from the school's perspective, but just know that it's a wraparound effort with our families and caregivers throughout the entire process. And so we all have mental health. Mental health is built and comprised of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we handle stress and interactions with others. We know that mentally healthy students are able to come to school and engage in learning activities. They're able to engage in social after-school activities. They are able to build positive relationships with peers and adults. They can use appropriate problem-solving skills, and they can modulate their emotions and their behaviors when they're faced with some adversity. And so we really promote, and West Hartford has always supported strong staffing and programming for positive mental health for our students. What we've seen over time, though, historically, is that we've seen a real increasing trend in our student mental health needs. We've seen that exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. You'll see in a lot of reports that the COVID-19 pandemic and mental health are really interrelated, but I actually want to just be clear that this was an increasing trend before the pandemic. A lot of new reports and research that are being released really discuss and disaggregate the difference between the two, and certainly we understand that the health pandemic and crisis had significant impacts on us as a society and certainly impacted mental health, but the increasing trend predates the COVID pandemic. And so what we're seeing is both the increasing trend that happened before that moment in time and also what's happening post the pandemic. But as I said, West Hartford Public Schools has always had really strong mental health programming. And we, through a formal process, look at scientifically research-based intervention through a very formal process to identify students' needs and whether or not they'd be eligible under a Section 504 plan or individualized education plan IEP. But what we've really seen in response to these trends that we're seeing is that not all students require such formal intervention. And so a lot of our efforts through the pandemic and post the pandemic have really been for proactive supports that are available to all students. So I'll highlight those throughout my presentation tonight so you have a good sense of the more formalized structures that we have in district to support students, but also those layers of support that we have that really enable our ability to enhance our identification of students' needs and intervene in a very short window of time so they get those supports right away. One of the measures that we use to track student data is our at-risk assessments. Oh, sorry. Was I on the wrong slide the whole time the other time? Oh, okay. Phew. We use at-risk assessments to track student instances of self-harm and or suicidal ideation. This is data that's been tracked over a longitudinal period of time. So we have good data. It's a good comparison mark for us. I do want to let you know that as you look at this data, obviously I've included the 1920 school year, which was impacted in March of 2020 with the school closure. And I also included the 2020-2021 school year, which is going to be reflective of our students having access to both hybrid learning, full remote learning, or in-person learning, depending on their grade and what they chose to do given that period of time that they were in. That impacts data. I also included the current year, while you'll see that it's representative to a total number of 142 here, and it looks much lower. I do want to let you know that this trend was in par with last year's number at this exact date being 146. So we do see a trend across time that our risk assessments are actually lower in the beginning of the year, and that in the spring we see our higher density and more connections with our students. So this graph really highlights that over time we've seen this increasing trend of how many student connections we make through our public schools for at-risk assessments. It's certainly very concerning data, but there is, it does give us an idea of what our student needs are so that we could be responsive in terms of staffing, programming, and supports. And so through our ESSER funds, which were our emergency relief funds following the pandemic, very planfully the district had allocated funds that went directly to clinical and mental health services. And in review of those funds 2 school years ago now, we reallocated additional funds to support a mental health coordinator and additional clinical positions at the elementary level. We also, through those funds, expanded our contract with a community provider, the Bridge Family Center, which provides in-district school counseling for students, mentorships, and group counseling for students. However, while we see this increasing trend, one of the bright lights that we see is in some of the questions that you were asking in the previous presentation around how do we measure some of these the impact on students. Are we building students who feel comfortable and safe in their schools? Are they connected with adults? And so one of the new data methods that I'm tracking, and I'll have comparative data in the future, is the referral source for our at-risk students. And so I included this graph here because some of the things that you note in this trend is that while predominantly we see staff as the primary connection for us to make these referral points for a risk assessment, student disclosures are up to over 18%. So that means that students themselves are feeling comfortable enough to seek a clinical or staff support and getting support and help for themselves if they're feeling in distress. And we also see that through the peer referrals and anonymous alerts, which upon review were mostly peer referrals, that 14% of those were peers getting help for other peers. And that is a good sign because we want to make sure through our programming that was discussed with Anne and Teresa and also some more that I'll share with you is that we're building students who understand the warning signs of suicide, a risk for their fellow peers, and that they understand who the trusted adults are that they can get help with, whether for themselves or for their peers. We really see that focus on welcoming schools and building trust and having every student have a trusted adult in the school as being a priority, as my colleagues were sharing earlier. And this is a little bit reflective of how students are making those connections with trusted adults in their school to discuss and disclose very sensitive topics. We provide programming and supports for all students. This isn't a program that's only open to students who have Section 504 and IEP programs. Our students are all assured guaranteed learning experiences, whether it was through advisory that was discussed earlier, morning meetings, through our curriculum. We have second step at the elementary school level and through our health lessons at the secondary level. We also have layers of support. So we have, as I said, the layer of support that doesn't require any type of referral. We have elementary school counselors, 5 of which support our 11 elementary schools. They don't carry a set caseload for intervention and are able to see students for a short-term basis and also help in determining if they need the next level of need, care or support with a clinician, a social worker, or psychologist. We also have triage clinicians at all of our secondary schools, across all 3 middle schools, and at both of our high schools. Again, they don't carry caseloads. So if I'm a student who's just having a tough day or I'm experiencing new anxiety, I can reach out to that school triage clinician at any point during my school day, have access to them, and they can help me be connected with outside supports, check in with me, follow up with me, contact my caregivers and parents, and help them find access to resources and supports. So that's been a huge proactive shift in the way that our model has functioned. We've always had school social workers and psychologists. We've always provided some form of non-mandated service, but this level that this model we've switched to really post the pandemic with these triage clinicians and our elementary school counselors has really helped us serve more of our students in our community, especially amidst what we're seeing as an increase with some of these needs. It's important for you to know that we have annual professional development that happens both at the district and at the building level for all of our staff that's focused on suicide prevention and awareness in our district protocols. So all staff have a strong understanding of what they should do should they hear something, see something, or a student give them a formal disclosure. We have also sent staff to be QPR trained, which stands for Question, Persuade, and Respond. We actually sent staff 2 years ago to be trained the trainer trained. So we have our own trainers in district that could facilitate that training to both certified and non-certified staff, which is part of our annual professional development. We are so fortunate at West Hartford. We have wonderful community partners, and we've expanded those partnerships both in traditional and non-traditional ways this school year. The Bridge Family Center, as I shared earlier, we've had such a long-standing, wonderful relationship with them. They provide in-school counseling services, grades kindergarten through 12. They provide small group support. It could be for grief and loss. Really, whatever the need that emerges is, they will create the group at a specific school in a specific grade level. They really tailor their intervention services for our students. And they also provide mentorship programs. So for any student who might be in need of a mentor, they can apply for that. The Bridge assigns a mentor that's well suited to that student and their needs. And that can be short-term or long-term. So some students have had the same mentor for several years, or maybe it's just a couple of months that they're looking for that short-term connection. But it's a really nice partnership that we've had with the Bridge. It's something that the district has funded for a long period of time. I'm not even sure how long it goes back. It well predates me, but the partnership really allows for families to access private counseling service paid for the district during school hours to really remove any socioeconomic or other family barriers that would prohibit a family from accessing outside counseling services. So it's really a nice service to have in the schools. I want to highlight our partners at the town of West Hartford. Their social services department has really robust services, and under some new changes in their department, they've really reached out to the public schools and have fostered such a nice partnership with us and continue to encourage our social workers and psychologists to lean on them for supports for families, for students, and they have really shown up in many different ways. They provide a lot of parent partnership opportunities in the evenings. They've offered opportunities, workshops for families, and they continue to do that work and include West Hartford Public Schools, which we really appreciate. But they offer a lot of services that support our families and our communities, and so we lean on them often. This year we started a new partnership that I'm happy to share with you with Hartford Healthcare. It's with their Institute of Living's outpatient clinic. It is an interesting new partnership whereby which they actually rent space from us. And it was designed to solve an issue that we were seeing in the community with mental health, with our families not being able to access therapists. So if a family had a child in need, they would call potentially a psychologist or an LSCSW, LMFT, and they were being put on very long wait lists because there's only so many hours between the end of school and the evening hours, and students have sports and activities, so they were juggling many different priorities and were putting on really long wait lists and weren't able to access clinical services. So in a partnership with Hartford Healthcare, we were able to bring in a full-time clinician who splits their time between Hall and Conard to provide families and students access to a private clinical service in the school building. And so that's free of charge to West Hartford, and it goes through a family's individual insurance if they would like to access that. There is a referral process for that service, but again, it really solved part of the need that we had, which we were unable to solve. Both the private providers were unable to find time slots for providers who had a lot of availability during the day, but no availability in the evening when students were available. We're very excited to share we're also exploring the same opportunity with the Bridge at the middle school level, and so we're hoping to actually initiate that in January. And so we're hoping to continue to expand in that way so that families have continued access to clinical services that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to secure for their child. We also have a partnership with the village to do drug, alcohol, and tobacco screenings and assessments for students who might be vaping or involved with drugs or alcohol. It helps students and families become assessed and also connected with resources for families and students who are involved in that way. We, as I said in the beginning, we couldn't do this work without our parents. Every time a risk assessment is conducted, we are calling our families, our parents, and our caregivers to alert them of a risk assessment, share what information was disclosed, connect them with resources. We follow up with private providers. Sometimes we connect them with the private providers. And so there's a lot of follow through whenever a risk assessment is conducted. And we have really strong parent partnerships in the community as well. And so we have a group that's a partnership with West Hartford Public Schools and Community of Concern that hosts an annual workshop series. And this year's workshop series is called Nurturing Youth Mental Health Event Series. And so the entire year's series of events is dedicated to student mental health. And this month, December 14th, is on grief and loss, but the topics this year include school transition, vaping, alcohol and drugs, healthy phone and tech use, which I heard earlier in a presentation, relationships, anxiety and depression, student wellness fair, and summer transition as they move into the summer months. So again, that's in partnership with our parents, which I really appreciate. We host annual through West Hartford Public Schools workshops for caregivers as well. Last year, Chris Dutton of the Bridge did a presentation on anxiety. We did a book study focused on how parents can support students with anxiety. And through my quarterly newsletters, we continue to put out resources and supports. And I had 2 leaders in our clinical department present at my coffee with the director last month. So we continue to have series that hopefully will be helpful and informative to our parents and caregivers as they navigate this very nuanced area. But certainly, appreciate their partnership in this because it's a very delicate topic and certainly one that we want everybody on board with when we're handling student mental health needs. We do have a continued support in the community, mobile crisis, but we have a new one. It's called Urgent Crisis Centers, or UCCs. There are 4 that were opened across the state of Connecticut, and again, this is kind of in response to what we're seeing with the mental health needs. It was a way for us to redirect students who are not in an emergency situation but might have critical needs in terms of mental health or something that they're struggling with, but to avoid them having to have long waits in the emergency department. So the urgent crisis centers are located in Hartford, New London, Waterbury, and New Haven. No appointment is needed for families. They're open from 7 to 11. They hope to be open even longer through the night so that families have around-the-clock access in the future. But it's for everything for thoughts of suicide, self-injury, anxiety, depression, and out-of-control behavior, substance abuse, and any other mental health crises that a child might be facing. And it's specifically geared towards children and adolescents, and so they specialize in that. So another really great resource in our community, specifically targeting mental health needs. So where are we going in the future? We continue to monitor our student mental health needs. We're reviewing, tracking data both on a district level and at each individual school. And as I said, we'll continue to put together workshops and connect with parents and caregivers around what their needs are and how we could better support them in supporting their children. We have always maintained a suicide prevention manual and a crisis manual at the district level. We review it every couple of years. This is the 2nd year of revision for our suicide prevention manual. And as I put in my board report, legislation from the summer session of 2023 reflected that all boards are required to have them. It's important you know that we've always had one. We're just in revision of it now. The Connecticut Suicide Prevention Board should be putting out some resources, some evaluative tools that we might consider. And so we have a core team of leaders in the department that are working on reviewing what's currently in place and making revisions, and we will put together a strategic plan to roll out those new plans, both the crisis intervention plan and our suicide prevention manual, and any changes that might go into that for the next school year. And we, as I shared, will continue to review and expand our community partnerships. We have had great success in our Harvard Healthcare partnership and bringing in our clinician. He came on as full-time and obviously did not have any students when he started, but the referrals have come in quickly, and so he is currently fully staffed. And so as we look ahead to our student needs and how that's fulfilling the needs of our mental health of our students, we want to make sure that we're being responsive to that in our efforts and looking at what other ways we might be able to expand services and how we can support students. We are all in this work together. It's very important work, like I shared, and it takes a strong team to come together, including parents, to be able to support a student with wraparound services when they're going through a crisis. But I think it's important that we all acknowledge that we all have mental health, and that mental health is part of who we are, just like physical health. We should give it just as much care and attention.
Thank you, Melissa. It was just a very thoughtful, comprehensive report that I think you handled in a really beautiful way. So and I learned a lot of things. I had no idea all those partners were involved in West Hartford. One question is just around how did those partners then coordinate with each other? So if they may have be like caseload management working with the same student and you'd want to kind of triangulate, is that something they're able to do?
So if we have outside providers such as Hartford Healthcare or the Bridge, we do one or the other. We are steering our more acute students who might be exiting a hospitalization or might have more intensivized needs with our Hartford Healthcare outpatient clinician versus our Bridge clinical services at the high school level. But the Bridge can support most clinical services. Anytime that we have a student who is seeing an outside provider within the school setting, we must have a release for any of those services to be initiated, because should a student be in a clinical session and a need arises for a risk assessment, we actually do that. Our own staff will do that. Even though their staff is trained to do so, it's important that our staff stays involved. So we always maintain a third-party release and share information amongst the providers. And oftentimes we have, for students who might have multiple providers, we have multidisciplinary team meetings in the medical world, we'd call them care coordination meetings, where all of the providers and participants who are caring for that child are involved in having conversations about the interventions, the needs, and our plan moving forward.
Jason?
Just thank you so much for that. As a Board of Ed member and as a parent, I feel very lucky to be living in West Hartford. Just based off of just how extensive that was, it just occurred to me, what's being done to make sure that parents know that those resources are there and that students know that all of those resources are there? Because I'll be honest, I didn't realize the extent of it until tonight.
Mm-hmm. So they're really kind of woven into the fabric of our schools. I know that as new services are added, the principals are really good about including some of those into our newsletters. I know that as we added our elementary school counselors, they offer times during PTO meetings to come. We really try to advertise our services so that people will take advantage of them. Like I said, with our Hartford Healthcare clinician coming on, we made sure to get that information out there to our high school families. I put it in my SMORE newsletters, posted on our websites, but we certainly want families to know that we do have these access points. And oftentimes, if a student is in the milieu, they may or may not be familiar with them, but if they ever have a moment where they might need to access them, or we might need to call their parents because we're engaging in a risk assessment where something has occurred, that's when really we could have a deeper conversation about the layers of services and what type of service their child might require or be able to access through our programming.
Claire?
As an extension to that, if someone should call 211, would they have the information to share back about what a student's district has offered, or is that more just a state service?
So 211 Mobile Crisis is more of a state service, and they actually have their own connection. So oftentimes, even as a school, if a student is having difficulty, we might call them for an intervention. They actually will connect families with additional services or supports that are even beyond what we have. They may or may not be knowledgeable about the services we have, but sometimes when they're being called, it's because we've already exhausted the services that we have in district.
And to that note, with the counseling access in elementary that's not part of your 504 or IEP, and all the other ways that these counselors are just woven into the fabric of the school, I love that mental health and seeking help is not, doesn't have the stigma that it did when I was in school. And sometimes people have to get to such a crisis point to reach out. And I think we're building a foundation that lets kids know that these are people to help you, just like the nurses down the hall to help you when you get a cut. They're mental health people to help you. So thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. And I agree with what you said. I think one of the greatest things that I see in our future generations is that they understand how important mental health is, and that stigma around mental health has really been dismantled. Students are comfortable asking for help and seeking help. Peers seek help for other peers, and I think there's real power in understanding the warning signs and how to get help for your friend or for yourself.
Gayle?
Thank you. That was a great presentation. I actually had two questions. The first question was, I believe that this is true, but I just want to confirm with you that any child that's put into any of those services, there's parents are notified?
100%. Yep. Any services that are provided, whether they're non-mandated or mandated, are always with the consent and informed, with parents being informed before those services are provided. A great question.
So any of the partner?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The partners, absolutely. But even so much as us having a school counselor meet with a student, we would inform a parent even in that case. Yep.
And then I had another question, and I don't, this, you may not know this, but I'm wondering if you do know what the dollar amount in terms of the ESSER funds that are connected to our mental health services, because I know we've put a lot of the ESSER funds.
Yeah.
What number is going to go away next year in terms of an actual dollar amount?
I don't have the actual dollar amount, but I know it's pretty significant, just to be transparent. Our bridge expansion alone went from somewhere around 80,000 to 200,000, so that would go back post ESSER funds to the $80,000 contractual amount. And our staffing is at 11 certified staff for our clinical, and so that will certainly be something we look for as we plan. We look for our student needs and be thoughtful in our planning for next year when we know that there's going to be the loss of those ESSER funds.
And I can provide updates on that through the budget process. It's a good opportunity. I was trying to get in a statement that really talks about the importance of the work that Melissa has so aptly described in a very comprehensive report, and that these are services that are not nice to haves, they're needs to haves, in the same way of school nurses, in the same way of nutrition services. Mental health is something that I think is a dramatic responsibility of the schools, and I like how Melissa puts it. We all have mental health, and these are just needs, and it's the opportunity to remove that. But the 11 positions we've already looked at and had some preliminary looks about all the positions under ESSER, but certainly the ones that are tied to mental health, those that we want to be able to retain, those that we want to be able to look to potentially keep but rebalance when we look at the entire structure. And so we're in discussions about strategies about what that will look like, but at the end of the day, I would want to underscore that mental health is an important component of the budget, and something that we want to assure that we can continue to fund appropriately.
So is it just the 11 positions and the contract with the bridge, or is there additional?
So there are a total of, I believe the number is 31 positions in total under ESSER, plus some additional funding like the expansion of the bridge contract. We've always had, as Melissa shared, we've had a long history with the bridge. We did an expansion of funding with the bridge during the pandemic through ESSER funds because we anticipated a greater need, especially coming out of social isolation. So between so the 11 that I think we're referencing are 11 positions under ESSER that are specific in one way, shape, or form to pupil services. But there's a greater number, and there's a strategy for all of the positions that we have. Melissa, I don't know if you want to talk about just what we have very quickly. I hit into the general fund, the numbers of social workers, the number of psychologists.
Yep. So we have a total of 23 social workers, which are actually, while we have 23 humans, there's 20.4 FTEs for social work, and there are 22 school psychologists that support the district. And that includes even beyond mental health services, especially for our school psychologists, they engage on all of our child find activities. So conducting evaluations for students, both for initial and triennial evaluations. So we also have, as our ESSER positions, we have 5 elementary school counselors, 1 mental health coordinator, 4 triage clinicians, and 1 elementary social worker in that bucket funded under ESSER.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Our next report is going to be. Hey, Lorna. Yes.
Pardon. Yes, Melissa, thank you so very much. Echo again, wonderful presentation. I also appreciate the question that you asked and Paul that you followed up with, because that was going to initially be my question as well. Recognizing the increase in clinical supports that have been provided and funded by ESSER funding. It's December, and we know we soon will be approaching the budget season. And a question, Melissa, that I'm assuming is a rhetorical question, but I do not want to assume that by having the additional clinical support in place to address pre-existing challenges in the district and those that were exacerbated by the pandemic, do you see that the increase helped us overall? And recognizing that, if that is quite the case, with the funding soon coming to an end, do you anticipate that things will just miraculously stay better?
Oh, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I will say that one of the metrics we use in addition to at-risk assessments is just how many touch points like our triage clinicians have, how many students they're connecting with, how many students are interfacing with our clinical teams, and we definitely see an increase in just connectivity. And I think that that really shows the impact that's having. We're reaching more students. More students are connecting with clinical services and getting support in one way or another. And that overall just bodes better for our students because they're reaching out for a reason or being referred for a reason. So if we're able to support them and connect them with the right resources, whether or not they require something more formalized or if it's short term, to be able to make that initial connection, provide their families a point of contact, and share resources is always a positive trend for our students. So, I hope to see and think about new ways to collect the data, because I don't want risk assessment data to always be the only metric I'm able to share, because I hope that we are able to still see that there's connectivity there. But I think the narrative around what happens with that connectivity will become more important. Because I think that, like I shared, one of the positive trends is that students are disclosing, they're feeling comfortable and safe. They're referring peers for help. And so I don't want to dissuade students from doing so because of the metric. I really want to think about how that metric then drives our resources and programming for our students.
Thank you. And would you say that it's also having the available resources that also encourages young people being able to share and disclose more?
I would say that one of the best things that West Hartford Public Schools has done in regards to its mental health services is really providing those proactive supports, those triage clinicians that don't carry a caseload that are just readily available. Our clinicians that have structured services and a caseload are seeing those students throughout the day. They certainly avail themselves of any crises or things that come up that require them to do so, but having a clinician that doesn't have a caseload that can just receive a student at any moment during the day when they're having a difficult moment or they're feeling comfortable enough to disclose has been really important, especially at the secondary level for our adolescent students.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm giving you a smile. You cannot see it, but I'm smiling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And my last slide is just some resources for the board and for the public.
Thank you, Melissa. Great presentation. So for an encore, we have Ann McKernan speaking to college credit bearing opportunities, advanced placement, early college experience, and college career pathways. Oh, and we're also joined by Eileen Eustace and Michelle Graveline.
So as Ann settles in, I'll just quickly, Eileen is our Director of Secondary Education, and Michelle Graveline, instrumental in this work. Michelle is currently on assignment at Sedgwick Middle School, but was really instrumental in the work of the ECE expansion grant, and just a great instructional leader for us here at the district. So I'll let Ann, you take it away.
Well, hello again. It's nice to see everybody again.
And Dr. Graveline, I should know this by now, right? It's my second time up today. And Dr. Graveline was in our office last year and did great work. So tonight, we are very pleased to be here to kind of focus our attention on a new topic, which is our college credit bearing programs and the results of those programs from last year. And this typically has been a report in the past that really focused on the advanced placement program, which is an enormously successful aspect of our educational program in West Hartford. But we wanted to expand it and include so that we could inform you on other credit bearing programs that we have for our students. So with that, and I'm getting used to this clicker, but it looks like it's working. Great. Today we'll talk a little bit about our philosophy as a district. I'll give you an overview of how we did it with our advanced placement work last year. And Dr. Graveline will give you an overview of our early college experience program. And Eileen will give you a great overview of our college and career partnerships. And then we'll have some time for questions and discussions. So our philosophy in our district, make sure we're on philosophy, we believe, of course, that every child can succeed at high levels, and that's important for us to message every day. We also believe every child should seek that challenge at the level that is best for them, and that's why it's so great to have a couple different ways to achieve college credit while you're still in high school. We do encourage students to try to complete at least one college credit bearing class while in high school if it's appropriate for them. Certainly there may be a student that does not feel it is, but we do believe the vast majority of our kids do want to and can take one college bearing, at least one. And we offer an array of college credit bearing programs to support their success. Sorry, I keep looking over my shoulder. I just have to make sure I'm going the wrong speed on this. So the first program we'd like to talk about is the Advanced Placement Program. This is a very well-known program. It's been around for quite a while. It's a global academic program. It's offered in over 100 countries. It provides students with a recognized academic credential. Students take a class and then they sit for an exam. The exam is scored on a 1 through 5 basis. Generally, a 3 or higher is considered the score that you would want to achieve to be recognized for college credit. Exam scores are considered in college admission, credit, and placement, as well as just the courses themselves, because they do indicate an increased rigor in your academic program. They are challenging courses. They allow an in-depth exploration of a topic with the requisite analytical reasoning skills or other skills necessary for success. This slide gives you a little overview of our success last year, and in 2022-23, 1,173 children in our high schools participated in this program, and we administered over 2,500 exams. 77% of those children scored a 3 or higher. So the program is exceedingly it's an extensive program. It is part of our identity that kids try these challenging classes. It's a real point of pride for us. The two charts I included here show you growth in the program since 2005. And as I look at Paul and I know his team, he was sitting in positions as teacher at Conard, department chair at Conard, and his cohort, Dr. Tom Moore before him and Julio Duarte after, all really wanted our children to have as much access to courses and exams as possible. And you can see this growth over time is a direct result of their focus on this program. I think you can clearly see a dip there in our charts, and the dip is quite clear because those were our pandemic years, and we saw a decrease both in the number of students taking and the number of exams taking. But you can also see a nice rebound in the last 2 years where we're coming back up to some previous levels. Over the years, our test participation has increased over 100% from the beginning to now. We've been doing, as I said, we saw the dip during the COVID years. Some students just couldn't, maybe focus on as many things with all the competing things that were going on in their lives. But the rebound is very impressive. This is a growth of 19 students over last year and about over 100 more exams this year. And one of the factors I'd like to also let you know is that since about 2018, we may have about 120 fewer students in the high schools between the two schools. So it's an increasing rate again with a decreasing population. So that kind of just tells you that it's a very strong program that kids really believe in. Moving on, one of the metrics that's really a good one to look at because it helps you to compare with other schools in the area is the metric called AP Equity and Excellence. And this is a measure of all your 12th graders who took at least one exam and scored a 3. And West Hartford has generally lived in the area of 50 to 60%, even into the low 60%. So more than half the class in every class has tried at least one and has scored a 3 on that. And Eileen was pointing out to me as we were preparing for tonight that this metric out of context doesn't tell you much, but if I told you the Connecticut average was about 28%, it would show you that our program is exceedingly strong. It's one of the strongest AP programs in the state, if not the strongest. You have a choice of over 31 classes, and students take advantage of them. In the end of your book, there's an actual, I think it's Appendix A. There is a list of all of the courses that are offered with the enrollments. And I think that is on page, this is a long book tonight, so just bear with me for a second. Page 74. Shows you the results, all the different courses, 73 and 74, thank you. Show you all the different courses and the number of children who took exams and their passing rates. So we're quite proud of this program, and as I said, it is helping students gain confidence that they can succeed in college. It is helping students gain college credit. And even if you don't, Paul always pointed out to us that even if you took the class and you scored a 1 or chose not to take the test, and I can tell you 89% of our kids who sit for the class take the exams. So it's a very small percentage of kids who actually don't take the exam. But even if you take the class and you didn't do well on the exam, you are still gaining quite a bit from sitting in the rigorous classes with your classmates and being exposed to that content and those skills. Moving on to, we always like to look at our work through the eyes of an equity lens and looking at our students of color and what Sorry, thank you. Looking at our students of color and their growth over the years since the available data starts for this around 2010, we are seeing that our students of color have increased about 89% in the program, and they have also gone up about 80% in their exams as well. And one of the things that's really important to understand is, although we're widening this door to more and more kids every year, the percentage of kids passing these exams is staying at a very high rate. And what's neat about this is that when you think about our approach in schools as providing the most rigorous education that we can, the most rigorous experience, it's largely because when you raise that bar for students, they achieve that bar. So this is probably one of the best examples to prove that. You've let more kids into the program, more kids taking more tests, and these rates are staying as high as ever, which is really encouraging. Our students of color in this particular example encompasses students who are Hispanic, who identify as Hispanic, Black, or 2 or more races. For the whole district, we've also seen a great increase in the number of students taking the exam, students participating, and the number of students taking the exams, and a very consistent percentage of students passing these exams with a 3 or higher. So really encouraged by this as well. Your book on page 70 gives you a little bit more full view of the achievement gap analysis. It was a lot to fit on one slide, so I tried to focus on the highlights. We're also very proud of this slide. Every year the College Board awards recognizes both students and schools. And so there are a variety of different awards students can receive. So an AP Scholar is a student who has earned a 3 or higher on 3 AP exams. And as you can see, we have over 80 students both at Conard and at Hall receiving that award. And then the AP Scholar with honors, again, a student who has earned a 3 or higher in 5 AP exams and has an average score of 3.25. And you can see another over 40 students in both schools receive that. The distinction, even getting a little bit more rigorous, 5 exams with an average of 3.5. And then we have a particular program called the AP Capstone Diploma, where you take a course called AP Seminar, which is an independent research course, which you take as the first of 2 courses of its similar nature, where students can pick a topic of high interest. In the seminar course, the big difference is that you do some group work, you do some research together on topics, you ultimately do your own papers and individual research, but that lays the foundation for the second course called AP Research, where you really investigate and research for the full year a topic of your own, much like a very intensive college study. And students who take both of those courses are eligible for the AP Capstone Diploma if they've earned a 3 or higher on both exams and have 4 additional AP courses. And then the students who have taken seminar and research and have earned a 3 on both tests are eligible for the certificate. So those are the individual student awards, and we have over 200 students, almost 250 students in each school earning those. And then our schools have been recognized as well. Both Conard and Hall have been recognized as AP School Honor Roll Gold status, and this status is awarded to schools that have a very strong college-going culture, a very strong college credit, earning college credits, and what they would call an optimization of the college experience. And schools who fit into this criteria receive the AP Honor Roll Gold, and both of our schools are there. So we're really proud of the program, but I think what's even more impressive than the AP program is the fact that it's not the only way. There's other ways for our students to start to dip into the college world and earn credit. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Crop. I'll do it for you. Okay.
I'm afraid of that thing.
I am too.
So one of the other programs that we wanted to highlight that's that's been present in our high schools for quite some time is the UConn Early College Experience Program, also known as the ECE program. It's actually one of the longest standing concurrent enrollment programs in the nation, very well respected. The courses are actually offered within our high schools, and the teachers of those courses are considered adjunct faculty to the university. So they have to go through a certification process with each department at UConn that the course is being offered through. So they have to submit their own educational credentials, and they have to provide a syllabus for the course that they're intending to teach. And the department within UConn that offers that course then reviews the credentials and makes a recommendation as whether they'll be certified to teach that course or not. So it's a fairly rigorous process. The program is also included in the state's next generation accountability standards. So that's one of the things that gets factored in if our students are enrolling in those courses. Something to highlight about this program is I'm referring to it as like a tuition-sheltered program. The per credit cost at UConn right now for UConn students is $681. Our students pay $50 per credit. So it's a significant difference in terms of the tuition that they're paying, and potentially a significant cost savings to them when they eventually do enroll in the college of their choice, whether it be UConn or not. The next slide gives you a couple of visual representations. One on the upper one on individual students in terms of enrollment over time. It happens to show from 2013-14 school year to last school year, but as I said, it's been a really long-standing program. So blue is Hall, Conard is in red, and then the gray is actually Durg B, and then the yellow is large high schools, which we would Conard and Hall would both be considered large high schools. Just so you can see, relatively speaking, that both of our high schools in district have significantly more students enrolled than both Durg B and our large schools in the state. And then the lower visual just gives you an idea in terms of the courses offered within a particular school or district. Again, both of our high schools having more coursework in the ECE program that they're offering than large schools or Durg B schools. There's 22 currently at Conard and 19 at Hall. And some of those differences could have to do with certifications, you know, whether a teacher is actually certified within to teach the course within each building. We have a very high pass rate, so students earning a C or greater are actually considered passing, obviously, the course, but it's not high school, it's college level course, so C or better. And in district, we have a 98% pass rate, so our students are doing very well in terms of succeeding in these courses. And one of the questions that I always used to get as a department supervisor was, can my child transfer that credit? What if they're not going to UConn? What if they're going to another college or university? They're actually credits that are actually very transferable. It's context related, so sometimes the school will offer to accept them as elective credits versus major credits in a major. So speaking again from my own personal experience in the math department, if we had a student who was headed for an engineering major or a math major or statistics major, they might not necessarily accept that course within that major, but they will accept it as an elective credit. So I always used to encourage students and families to ask a lot of questions when they talk to someone at the particular university or college that they're interested in transferring the credits to. And relative to the AP program, we have about 500 students. enrolling in the program and about 1,050 enrollments. So in other words, a student could be enrolling in multiple courses that carry ECE credit. And some of them are actually courses that carry both AP and ECE opportunities. The next slide gives us just our standing. Interesting to see that both of our high schools are actually in the top 10 schools in terms of highest enrollment for students in the ECE program. And that really actually gave us it positioned us really well Paul mentioned that we were able to apply for a grant that the state of Connecticut was offering to districts who already had a program. So it wasn't for districts that were just beginning a concurrent dual enrollment opportunity for students, but for a district like ours who is already really well positioned in terms of offering these kinds of opportunities to students, it positioned us well to apply for that grant. We were accepted and we then looked at how did we want to spend the money, because in terms of how we could utilize the grant funds, really the key ways were either in terms of providing professional opportunities for our teachers in the K-12 system in the high school world to get together with folks from the colleges that were offering the courses, in our case predominantly UConn. We could offer curriculum writing opportunities. So for any new courses that we were starting, teachers and department supervisors could be given stipends for writing the curriculum for the new courses. And in some cases, the teachers may be able to be certified to teach the courses if they were able to take 1, 2, maybe 3 more courses in order to complete their own education credentials to become certified to teach those courses. So the grant could also be used for those opportunities. When we looked at the already robust system that we had in place in terms of departments and what they were offering, we were really wanting to focus on what are the gaps, where are the gaps in terms of departments and in terms of coursework. And that's what you see on that lower graphic in terms of the courses that we're really excited to be offering. Computer science, an additional computer science course, because some of our students were actually going through the computer science course offerings that we currently have before they were juniors or certainly seniors. So another opportunity for computer science. American Sign Language too, drawing, kinesiology, public speaking, and health in urban environments. So you can see they're outside of our core academic courses because that's what's going to really expand access in terms of the students and the number of courses and the different opportunities that we can provide to students. I think Eileen's going to talk about our third.
Just two things I wanted to mention, and thank you, Dr. Kraveling was very instrumental in helping to write this grant. But we wanted to make sure that no matter what class you're in, no matter what academic area you're in, you have an opportunity for a college credit class. So what was different here was, for instance, in our phys ed and health department, our wellness department, we didn't have any college credit bearing classes. So that's why kinesiology and health in urban environments was important to add there. So you can actually get a college credit now through a wellness course. Our arts department did not have a college credit bearing class. So public speaking is in our theater program. The computer science class is particularly important because not only are our kids tapping out, they're finishing AP computer science principles, some by 10th grade, and they're looking for more. But I believe if this course, and these are proposed, there's a little work to do to make sure they happen. Teachers have to apply to UConn, they have to write syllabus, they have to be accepted. This class is in the engineering department. It's one of the first times UConn Engineering has ever offered a class to high school students, and we're probably one of only 2 or 3 schools in the state or districts in the state who are going to be able to offer if all goes well. We already have a teacher who's already approved for that class. So I just wanted to add that before we turn it over.
And before you turn it over, just a point I want to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of those courses are existing courses for
Yeah.
Conard and Hall, and so it's just going to be an articulation of the curriculum to the UConn curriculum. And I share that only because it provides the example that the goal that every student should be able to take a college class. Students are taking these classes already. We want to be able to provide the messaging and the understanding that this is not outside the grasp of the majority of students, and it's sort of getting credit for work that you would otherwise already be doing.
So to Paul's point, American Sign Language 2, Drawing 2, and Public Speaking are already offered and just need to be articulated. The new classes will be the computer science, the kinesiology, and the health. I'll turn it over to Eileen.
I think one other thing to point out with the UConn ECE is that UConn reached out to us for a couple of classes. UConn is looking to expand their ECE offering, so they are adding more courses to their repertoire, and I think it's significant that they specifically reached out to us as well. So I'm actually going to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about our College and Career Pathways program, also known as the CCP program. This is another program that's been around for a number of years. It was here when I was here previously, back in 2016. And really, this was an opportunity to connect and earn college credit through our community colleges, particularly related to our CTE department. They were tightly aligned, and prior to this year, our community college that we were connected with was Capital Community College. So what typically happened is you were really limited to what was being offered through Capital. So they may not have offered all of the programs that were in the community college system, but because they were our partner school, that's what we were limited to. Since the state has shifted to and brought all of the community colleges under the same umbrella, so it's now CT State Community College, we also have an opportunity to expand some of our programming through the CCP program with CT State. So we're really excited about the opportunities that are going to be available. So similar to ECE, students would have an opportunity to earn credit through the community college, aligned with our courses. Here, it was significant in terms of increasing the college and career readiness of our students by providing firsthand experience. And as I said, it was particularly focused in the career and technical education area. And one of the things that they would do is, the idea would be that they would encourage you to travel through a pathway. And that way you would actually finish with a bank of credits that could be applied to a particular pathway. So if you were heading into community college and you wanted to go into a certification program, you actually had a head start, because the idea would be that you were encouraged to continue in a particular pathway. So if we go to the next. So we currently have two pathways, one in business and finance and one in technology and engineering. And again, those are set up mainly because those are the offerings that we could connect to Capital with, but we're excited to be able to explore the opportunity to expand in other areas, potentially things like culinary, hospitality, and other areas as well. So just to talk a little bit about our CCP courses and the expansion plans, previously the courses the credit was granted through Capital. Now, again, it will be expanded through the CT State. The 3-year average of students participating is 66 students per year. And our most popular courses are accounting, AP Computer Science Principles, and personal finance. And then just to transition, one of the things that we're looking at beyond just our post-secondary schools are some of our partnerships with other agencies to expand our workforce development. So we have been in some initial meetings to further enhance the partnerships that we have. And you can see, based on what we have here, we've had some initial planning meetings with the Economic Development Team, Chamber of Commerce, and State Representative Jillian Gilchrist. There was a workforce development needs meeting, and then the next meeting was a follow-up in terms of offering a manufacturing expo and job shadow day. And then I believe it was Ann and Paul were engaged in a conversation with Dr. Thomas Cooley, the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships and Enterprise Performance through CT State Community College in terms of expanding our partnership there. I think it's really significant. They are looking, they would love to continue to partner with West Hartford and expand their partnership. So we really see this as a wonderful opportunity, not only to earn credits that could lead to whether it's a degree, but it could also lead to certification. So perhaps students may not want to fully pursue associate's or a bachelor's degree, but many students may want to pursue certifications. And these are the types of partnerships that will give us a leg up, whether it's through mentorships, internships, apprenticeships, as well as earning the credentials that may be needed to advance in our workforce. I know that you're all aware that there are many industries, particularly locally here, that are really in desperate need of skilled workers in particular areas. And we really want to work to educate our students into what those opportunities are. And so we've talked a little bit about, you know, we've been in conversation with some of these groups, and those conversations will continue. One of the last ones on the list there is that we've also been in conversation with Fire Chief Greg Priest, and in terms of what can we also offer related to public safety pathways, and we have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow in terms of what can we do to move that forward. So really excited about expanding our opportunities beyond just college credit, but also looking at various credentials that students could earn while they are in high school.
And I want to credit Kate Farrar also, right, Ann?
Yeah. So I want to thank my partners here. Just to give you an overview, if you're in our high schools, you have a lot of ways where you can start college credits and thank you, and meet your own needs. So with that, we open it up for any of your questions. Latoya.
Yeah, so my question is around the achievement gap analysis and looking at students of color. I think I might have brought this up before too, and thinking about disaggregating the data. I would love to see it broken down a little more. Like I like to see where Black students are landing, and then like Latino students and whatever. And the reason that I'm thinking about that is because when we think about like the future of those kids, especially when we're talking about how great West Hartford schools are, I want to make sure that like Black kids, Latino kids are represented in that, and not in like a, you know, just a few students. Yeah. You know, that there's intention around engaging families to encourage their students to take these opportunities. And so I also think that there are different barriers when it comes to like Black students versus Latino students and having access to these opportunities too, and like how it would look different to engage those families and those cultures. So I feel like sometimes when we lump them all together, I don't know, it's hard to kind of like specifically target that community and like kind of help bring that number up. Because like I think it's great that we have that big increase of students of color, 75%, that's awesome. But I'm still looking at like 63% overall, like in comparison to 78 and 77, and I'm thinking about the overturn of affirmative action, and I'm thinking about how that's going to impact students of color's acceptance rates in college. That's like a real reality right now. So that's something that I guess like I'd like to see just kind of more specifically, so we can think about, and I just think about myself as like someone in the community, like what's going on here with the Black community and Black kids, you know, having access to this? What's going on with the Latino community and that community having access to this? And then thinking about the CT State College program, which I think is, I think it's awesome that they're doing these. You guys are allowing kids to take college classes. I am a student who went to college as a second semester sophomore because I took college courses in high school. But it was because I had people who advocated for me to do that. And so I also think about like, I was a teacher, so I know the kinds of opportunities to advocate for my daughter. But if I didn't have that background, I wouldn't have known about that stuff. It was never presented to me. And so I think about how with the CT college programs, they have now the Morehouse program, where you can go to one of the CT state community colleges, and if you earn an associate's, so you go for 2 years and you maintain a 2.7 GPA or higher, and you're a young black male, you have an automatic transition into Morehouse College. And so that's something else I'm thinking about too, in terms of like our district and that partnership now, since there's CT State College is a part of it, and just again thinking about the percentage here, like how can we take it further for our Black community and our Latino community? Yeah, so thanks.
Thank you. Noted. We can separate by more by individual groups beyond students of color.
Just related to that, I just was curious to the disaggregation of the AP Scholars data too, if that was possible.
Yeah, I did not have that. I didn't look at it that way, to tell you the truth. But one thing I do want to it's not a caution, it's just something that I just need to mention, is when we get the AP data, the kids, we don't share their SASID numbers with the College Board for AP. They get them for SAT because it goes through the state. So when you don't have that, kids self-report their race, so in fact in this data set I had 55 kids not report their race in this AP data set. So that was a little hard to report because I had a chunk of kids missing, not an enormous chunk. And then so there's just a few barriers to having it be perfectly accurate. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And even with UConn, when we get the UConn data, we don't share our SASIDs, which is our student individual ID number, with UConn. They get a UConn number, and we get that back. And we can disaggregate it, and we do, but occasionally there's some barriers that we have to be careful with, especially when students are asked to self-identify race, because that can actually change a little bit. Or I had said on my West Hartford, I was 2 races here, I'm saying something different, because maybe they don't even realize how it's reported in West Hartford. It may have been in there for many years a certain way. So, but it is important, and we do look at our greatest participation for students of color is in the CCP program by percentage, with about half the kids in the CCP program identifying as Black, Hispanic, or 2 races, and in the ECE program, we have over 25% of the students identify as Black, Hispanic, or 2 races, and in the AP program, about 20. So I can do it. I don't know if it's perfectly accurate. Sometimes the data sources are a little bit different, but it's close. Thank you. Ethan?
Yeah, I was curious on the numbers. I counted I thought there was like 1173 took the AP.
Yep.
Another 500 roughly took the ECE courses. Another 66 I heard took the.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, and I know we have the data. We don't have it here. What the total student body is, and what percentage. Yeah, it would just be interesting to look at the context. And I realize some of these are. You said some are the AP students are taking the other 2.
Yes.
But it'd be interesting to see the total.
We can do that. I did not do that for tonight, but we can look at individual students, because there's a large overlap in AP and ECE especially, and then there's some overlap with CCP, and then there's some overlap between ECE and CCP. So we'd have to pull all the names and then find the singletons.
I just found it seems like it's a large percentage.
So I was going to share that at the end of the year we have the district performance and profile report, and there are 2 metrics, and Dr. Graveline mentioned it earlier in the accountability system for schools. That's like the big accountability report. We typically report out to the board in May on that, and there are 2 metrics. One is college and career access, and the other is college and career achievement. And what the state does through data that we feed them is they will take care of a lot of that overlap for us, because they will measure the number of students that have had a college and career experience, an access point, and then those that have met whatever the state has defined as the proficiency benchmark. So generally passing the ECE class or getting a 3 or above on the AP exam. And so that metric does get reported that way. It is something, if you wanted, we could put into this report, but there is a lot of, when Ann talks about overlap, what What she's saying is, I could be enrolled in a course right now, a particular math course, for instance, AP Statistics. It's a UConn-aligned course, so I could be getting my ECE credit, but I could also be taking the AP exam, and we would just have to be very careful at an individual student basis. We know who's in the course. Now we have to say, okay, did you sit for the exam with AP? Did you take the UConn test? Did you do both or not?
Yeah. No, I'm not looking for perfection, which is context.
Yeah, so I think the PPR will provide that for you, I guess is what I was trying to share.
Okay. Second question for you is on the schedule on page 71. The various scholars, do those overlap or are those unique individuals?
Those are unique individuals.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that would
those
also
are
be
unique.
interesting to look in the total.
Yeah, that, I think because of the way the categories are written, if you've met AP Scholar, you automatically go up to the next one. You don't get both. For instance.
I didn't know. I assumed
Yeah,
that,
so
but-
they're individual. That's pretty impressive.
No, it is, especially that number. And then the last comment I had was, and I don't know, but on page 70, and again, I realize this is just people who qualified, but it says like if 15% of students of color versus total, seems like a very low percentage, so I wonder, you said the data is self-reporting, so it probably is not real, it's probably understated.
I'm sorry, which point on page 70 are you?
I'm just saying, student of color is roughly 15% just
Oh.
of total.
Yeah,
I think that sounds, you would know better than me, but it sounds small. So I
Yeah,
assume
we-
it says self-reporting, you said it.
There is a self-reporting aspect of that we have to be careful with, and I can pull the data myself from our files, but the kids have self-reported at that moment a certain way, and then there's a missing chunk, so I'm a little cautious with
No,
that.
it seems understated. So that was all, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just had a question is in terms of students of color versus, I guess, Asian and the whole district. Why, did you have any, like, thoughts about why the number of students of color has decreased more dramatically than certainly the Asian students and even the entire district? So if I look like from 2017 to 2022, the decrease in the students of color is much greater than the entire district.
Yeah, those were difficult years, and what we found across all of our standardized testing is that the pandemic effect wasn't even for everyone. The pandemic hit certain groups harder. We saw academic losses in some of our student of color tests, subgroups for tests that were more significant. But what I'm encouraged by is the rebound. The rebound is coming back, and it's coming back strong, which is showing a real resilience. So although I'm bothered by that, it is actually in line with other things we were seeing. Not so much to say that it's okay, it's just consistent to say that the pandemic had a disproportionate effect on certain people. And it had an effect on everyone, but it was harder on certain groups. We saw that in SBAC, we saw that in AP, and now we're seeing it here. But I am encouraged that the group is coming back quite strong, and I believe that the consistently earning in the it's been in the 63 to 66 range, and it was 62 this year. It's in a range that's similar, and the numbers coming back pretty strong, and I believe it will continue. I think our efforts at expansion in our ECE and CCP program too will attract a lot more kids into in general the college credit bearing programs, especially since we're now offering them in all classes, not just, let's say, high level math and high level science and high level English, but now in every academic area you're going to have an opportunity, and I think that's going to bode well for all students, especially students who haven't always taken advantage of the program. So I was also upset about that when I saw it, but then I really do like to see this 20 student increase and this, almost 80 test increase in that group since the low.
And I just want to point out 2017, and if you go back and look at the charts on page 69, that was our highest benchmark year. So at that point, we're comparing ourselves to pretty much to the maximum
we'd ever achieved.
Number of students we'd ever achieved. And close to the maximum number of exams. I think 2018 was our highest number of exams ever achieved. So it sort of sets the bar for where we'd like to get back to.
One other thing I just want to point out, there will be a little bit of variability year to year. There are times where schedule does impact what is offered. Some courses may be offered every other year. So you may see like a slight dip in a number, and it may be because that course wasn't offered because it's being offered in even years or odd years. And some of that is for scheduling purposes, in order so that you can actually run a full section.
Jason?
Thank you all for the presentation. It's actually the first time that I've wanted to go back to high school since leaving high school, so that's a credit to all of you. I have two, hopefully, quick questions for you. One is looking at the workforce development program as kind of an alternative to a career. What's being done to kind of educate parents on that as well? Because I think that could continue to be a barrier to, seeing that as a viable career, especially in a town like ours, that's as affluent as ours is, where, for decades now, it's been everybody goes to college. What's being done to really educate parents on this as a really good, viable alternative?
No, I think that we're going to.
No, go ahead.
In our early conversations, so our first meeting with Jillian Gilchrist, the workforce development team in the chamber, it was really just Paul and myself. And right away when we heard them, we said, wait a minute, stop. We need another meeting, and we need to have our director of counseling here, because right away we are recognizing what you're saying. We also needed to have our CTE director there, our internship director there. Eileen needed to be there. So almost from the get-go, everyone said, counselors are the ones who help most with your discussions about what you should take. And we want to lift the program. So, West Hartford is very much a 4-year college going town, but we want to lift the program and the opportunity so kids see that more as a really terrific alternative to, or mix with their other programs. And so involving counseling early so they know what's out there is crucial. And then after that, figuring out a communication plan to raise that. But I think that if we are able to expand beyond one community college, we're going to be able to do things that some of the community colleges have, things like advanced manufacturing floors, and they're fabulous. As Nuntuck's is, I think, a state-of-the-art facility. Some have automotives. Now, we have automotives, but Capital doesn't. It's downtown Hartford, right? So Manchester has culinary. So we really need to show the kids the options so they're not used to seeing those in CCP, get the counselors involved so they know the options, and then form a communication plan. So as it forms, I think the answer is know that you not only need an action plan, you need a communication plan for the parents and for the kids.
Thank you. And my second question is, I think we're all probably rightly impressed by our youngest speakers tonight. And so not to put you on the spot, but especially as coming on as a new board member, if it either tonight or at some point in the near future, I could get kind of an update on, we could get an update on what the current policy is with respect to homeschoolers taking AP exams, and maybe the whys and the whats and the hows of that.
I can give you an update, Jason.
Claire?
Yeah, I was just curious about, are most of the AP exams standard from school to school? Are they computer-based, and are they at the same time of year that other schools, so they're all coordinated?
Yes.
And is this a regular school day?
It is, but there are some exams that do occur. There's one time slot that occurs at 4 o'clock as well for some of the exams. So they're scheduled throughout the day. It is a set schedule. It is set by the College Board, and we are seeing more and more of the AP tests go to a digital platform. So some are still paper, some you can choose, but more of them are going digital, and I can foresee that they will likely over time move all of them to a digital platform, just as they have done with the PSAT and the SAT.
So someone taking a certain AP exam in Glastonbury would be taking it the same time, same day?
Yes.
Actually, all over the country and all over the world, they give the same schedule. Different time slots in the day, but the AP, it's the first 2 weeks of May, generally. And I see Liam nodding his head because he's probably sat for many of these tests, but it's the first 2 weeks of May, so we try very hard not to schedule other things. The College Board releases the schedule, and there's generally 2 exams a day?
2, sometimes 3.
2 to 3 exams a day. There's usually one at 8 and then one around noon. But it's for the whole world, really, because there are a limited number. They don't have multiple versions of each test. And Eileen's right. It's going more and more digital, but there's still some paper.
Who bears the cost of the exam?
So the children pay the cost for 90% of the exams are $98. The lab exams and the AP Research and AP Seminar are $148. Students who receive free and reduced lunch are able to get those free. And then there is also you can let your counselor know you need some assistance if you're not free and reduced lunch, and we always set aside some funds to support families. Sometimes a child is not in free and reduced lunch, but they're taking 4 or 5 APs. That's a heck of a cost for a family. So we need to bear in mind not just the income, but also the number you're taking and try to help out. And we have a process for that. And so it is less than a UConn course, which is $150. It is about $98 for most courses.
And I just want to underscore, Ann said it, but given our goal, we, with this, with UConn, with anything else, we always encourage if there's a financial struggle, talk with your counselor, talk with your principal, and we try to work with families to help support participation, because I think participation is the most important metric within all of this.
It's something that the state also pushed to recognize in 2019, the Board of Regents. With the exception of UConn, all of the community colleges, as well as the other state institutions, will accept students who've earned a score of 3 or higher for credit. So that was an agreement that they put forward. UConn will certainly accept AP credits, but a lot of times it depends on program that you're going into and then how they will count the credit.
Claire?
Yeah. I've been so impressed with your post-secondary. And now this is like the opposite end of the spectrum. And it's amazing that whatever your need is and whatever your gift is, that you're trying to meet the kids where they are and push them to a new place. So just wanted to thank you, the broad spectrum of what we offer all our different mini humans. So
thank you for recognizing that, because as you're saying, from our students who are in a post-secondary program or working at the next chapter to the students who are in 10 AP classes or what have you, we're always trying to meet everyone's needs, and I appreciate you recognizing that.
Lorna, anything to add?
Yes, thank you. Again, wonderful information, and I just continue to be impressed with where things are, and recognizing where things are. I can't help but to think of anecdotally what I've heard about where things were, in that how there was not always that level of receptiveness of encouraging all students, in particular students of color, to take certain classes or AP classes, for example, and seeing the number increasing significantly. So I appreciate your continued effort in recognizing the potential of all students and also encouraging the mindset of adults to also encourage and recognize that potential as well. So thank you so much for this great work, and please continue doing so.
Thank you all. All right. Moving on to routine matters. Can I have, for moving on to financial report, can I have a motion to approve the financial report for the period ending October 31st, 2023?
I make the motion.
Second. Any discussion? Question?
Do I do the president?
Yeah.
He's the reporter.
Sure.
So for the report on page 76, is as of the end of October 2023, 4 months into the fiscal year, or 1/3 of the fiscal year. 4 funds are covered. First one being the general fund. The budget for the general fund for the fiscal year of '24 was $190.2 million. As of the end of October, 47.1 has been spent. Currently forecasting fiscal year 24 to be basically on budget, 190.2 million with a 25,000 positive variance, but basically immaterial at this point in time. The major positive variances is 450,000 in terms of teachers' assistants, 150,000 in terms of pupil services, and on the negative side, other purchase services which is basically using contractual services to fill personal gaps, a negative 450, and then paraprofessional support, a negative 350. But as I said, basically, right now projecting to be on budget with a slight variance. Second schedule is the grant funds, and basically the one significant fund there, the ESSER funds, contribute over $5 million of the $10 million, and those are expected to be fully utilized in fiscal year 24 as well. And then the third schedule is of the special funds, 9 specific funds, roughly $2 million in reserves, and there was no significant change yet for month to month or for the fiscal year. And then the final one is the Nutrition Services Fund, and that has a reserve at the end of October of $3.3 million, and that will be used presumably for equipment, some of which has been identified, and then food service renovations in terms of the buildings, and then basically a small reserve presumably left over. And that's what I got. So any questions for Liz or us?
No questions? All right. So all in favor of recommending that the Board of Ed approve the financial report for the period ending October 31st, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to routine matter approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 21st, 2023 regular Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any discussion? Changes? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. So moving on to information and reports, any board member, we were removing A1 as a kind of carryover from a prior agenda. Any other information or discussions? No? Future business, an announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 19th, 2023, our regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall, followed by Tuesday, January 16th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting with a presentation of the capital improvement plan at 7 p.m. again in this same chamber. And moving to request for any future agenda items. No. Any additional comments from visitors? Come on up. If you can just restate your name and town, please.
Yes, my name is Olivia Thomas-Farquharson, and I'm from West Hartford. I just like to say that I learned so much here, and I'm so glad that I could come and speak. And I'd especially like to thank Mr. Gagnon, also on behalf of all my siblings, for mentioning our issue and taking it up as a topic of concern. And I look forward to coming back here sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Great public speaking skills. All right, we have no executive session this evening, so may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Meeting adjourned at, what is time? I can't see that far away. 10:03 p.m.